Good evening. Welcome to the school committee meeting of June 7th, 2018. I'd like to call the meeting back to order from executive session. Do we take a motion for that? Oh, I thought I said we took a motion. That's what I was asking. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to remind everybody this meeting is recorded, so please silence your phones. And we will start with public comment.
Hi, Melissa Martin, 56 Candlestick Road. I wanted to raise awareness that we need to increase resources to the high school for staffing to reduce class sizes. Mr. Jackson, Mr. Nugent are doing a great job with what they have, but I don't feel like it's enough. Many of the AP classes, especially in the humanities, are well over 30 students. Those in science are limited to 24 due to the labs, so they are not going to exceed that, which creates a lot of problems. You have, so unless they're a senior, there's a good chance that an AP student who has gotten recommendations, has done all the work that they needed to do, will not get the science that they're looking for their junior year, which then challenges their class schedule their senior year. So they may not, even though they've done all the work they've needed to do, they may not get the classes that they deserve to get. We also have students not getting into the some of the honors programs, even at the lower levels, even at freshman year, sophomore year for the combined English and history class, because there aren't enough teachers teaching it. There are waiting lists, and the average class size in general I would love to know the average class size for core academics. So we're told that the high school average class size is acceptable, but I know that that number is including some of the electives. Currently, my daughter is in an elective with under 20 kids, but her AP class has over 30. So I really think that more investigation and more resources need to go to the core classes, not just the overall examination needs to go to the core classes, not just the electives.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Seeing none. Turn to recognition. Race Amity Day.
So we had a couple of students who came and spoke a few weeks ago, and they prepared a video, which we thought it may be enjoyable for everyone to see. They put a lot of work into it. Race Amity Day is this Sunday from 10 to 12 at the high school. And this was shared in every high school advisory last week. So we just thought it would be a good thing to share with everybody. Kids have put a lot of work into it.
Combined with education is the key to the future of this country.
And it's so simple, it's totally overlooked. We forge ahead and say, well, we got to get people to do this, we got to make them do that. And friendship ultimately gets to the heart, and that's really the transformative, lasting impact.
Hi, I'm Lana Kelly, and I'm the 2018-2019 president of Student Council at North Andover High School. Hi, I'm Caitlin Dolly. I'm the 2018-2019 vice president at Student Council. On behalf of the student body, we'd like to say that we think Race Amity Day is very important because it gives an opportunity for cultures that aren't necessarily in the spotlight here at North Andover High School to be acknowledged. And so we really hope you guys come out on Sunday, June 10th and help us celebrate all the cultures that make up North Andover.
To you, why does race amity matter in the context of North Andover?
Well, I think that it's important because you celebrate everyone's differences. I also think it's important to be educated on this culture.
So, years ago, I moved to Mexico
personally, as a Vietnamese American, I believe that it's imperative for everyone to have some bonding time, to share different cultural ideas, to help bridge our diversity together.
Race Amity Day is an important day for us to come together and understand different cultures and celebrate the uniqueness of this community. It's really important for us to build bridges and come together as a community and celebrate the very unique people here, and that's what we want to do in our Race Amity Day.
Race Amity is important in North Andover because it helps us understand others and what makes them who they are.
Race Amity is important because it promotes the inclusion of all cultures, which is really important in North Andover.
Race Amity Day is important because it promotes learning about other people's cultures and embracing them.
Race Amity Day is an opportunity for our community to come together and embrace our differences.
Hello everyone, my name is Chet Jackson. I'm the principal of North Andover High School. We're looking forward to Race Amity Day coming up in early June here at the high school. It's important for us as a community to embrace all cultures here in North Andover and learn from each other. Anytime we have an opportunity to share in our arts, in our cultures, in our foods, in our experiences, it helps to make the community learn from each other and helps to brighten all our perspectives. So we look forward to seeing everyone part of Race Amity in June. Thanks.
Hi, I hope to see you guys on June 10th on Race Amity Day. Hola, espero que te veo Julio 10 en la Día de Raza.
Dạ, xin chào. Tôi kính chúc bạn để đi tới buổi lễ Race Amity Day để chung vui và được thưởng thức với văn hóa của tiểu bang Massachusetts. Dạ, cảm ơn.
我们希望你能参加 Race Amity Day.
Race Amity 이렇게 되기를.
All right, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just a reminder, that's this Sunday from 10 to 12 at the high school. Now bring up our students for a student report.
Our television star.
Yeah, I wasn't aware I was filming until that day. So, really dressed for the occasion. Do you want me to go first? Okay. So since the last time we saw you guys, I know a ton has been going on for Liam, a little less for me. Over, I think, the weekend after our last meeting, me and Jack Muse, who are the school committee student representatives for next year, went to a Massachusetts Association of School Committees conference. And it was really interesting because it was the first one, and I definitely think there has to be more progress made with it because it kind of, we were doing less workshops and more like think tank type of a thing, but overall I think it was helpful just to kind of hear about what other schools kind of think is going on with theirs and kind of be able to get some perspective over what to look out for next year based on like what other schools have had experience with. So I think it'll be really helpful next year kind of being able to talk more about some of the issues that we brought up towards, I want to say, the end of this year, such as like the parking and the vaping issues. So also I have a certificate if any of you want that, but Jack has one too if you guys want some proof that we went.
Mr. Jackson might want that. But
Is that like, so is it a bunch of like student representatives, or are there also members of school committees, or how do they?
Yeah, so it was a giant conference. We had like students in one room and then all the adults in another room, so we didn't really intermingle. But for the room I was in, it was a couple people who were running it, who were on their boards, and then a bunch of just student representatives from kind of all over Mass. Some people drove like 2 hours, and I was like, okay.
I heard from Glenn Kujar, who's one of the main folks at MASC, if not in charge of it, and he said you guys were fantastic. He made a point to say that the North Andover representatives at that conference were incredible. So,
wow.
Good
to know.
All right.
Yeah. Well, obviously we've got a lot going on. Prom this Sunday was at Gillette. It was probably the best prom we've ever had, and I'm saying that completely gloating on that, but it was fantastic. I really liked that. I think everyone I talked to was like worth the hour and a half drive. It was because hour and 10. It wasn't that bad, but a lot of people were worried about the drive. I think everyone was super happy when we got there. It was a lot of fun. I'm sure you guys all saw pictures. It's great. And then we went to King's Bowling yesterday, where we got to hang out at Linfield. That was a lot of fun. I think it was a good moment to bond as a class. the day before that we went to Kimball Farms. Sorry, I'm jumping around. But the day before that we went to Kimball Farms, which is another great day, great bonding day. I think everyone positive experience. That was a little different from last year, where in the past we've gone and done the clam bake at Foster's, but put out for a vote and people wanted to go to Kimball Farms, and I think it was interesting, a good change. I don't think anybody was mad about it. I think we all really enjoyed it. Positive feedback is all I heard there. Scholarship night was last night. Most scholarships given out, over $170,000, which was really awesome. More recipients than ever before, so a lot of money given out. That's a big help, and I think we all really enjoyed that. I think a lot of people thought that was going to be a down moment, but I think we really enjoyed, cheering each other on and being there for each other, getting those. I think that's a relative, from what I've heard, that's a relatively new addition to the North Andover within the last 5 or 6 years or so, and I think, I would say another success, something we should hold on to. And then awards day this morning, another, I'd say, similar success, but even more of the classes involved there, cheering for each other, parents, for the second year in a row, the whole school came, which was really cool. I mean, not just the juniors, but also the sophomores and freshmen there, where it was a lot of fun. And then moving into graduation tomorrow, so the week kind of flew by. Yeah.
I will say, in terms of the award ceremony, I do think that today it was kind of hard to get anything done in some of the classes, only because granted, my schedule this trimester is kind of I have a couple art classes, so it's when I would take something out, we would do it, and then we'd have to put it back, because with painting, it's a mess. But I think something that would be interesting to work with is to work with the time next year, because I do think, obviously it's difficult, because how can you keep all your classes at full length? But I feel due to the fact that they were shortened times, I personally had a harder time getting anything done today, and especially with, finals coming up, I think, especially I have a research paper coming up that we were able to workshop today, but it was difficult to get some done with that. So.
That's fair.
We want to thank you very much for everything you've done for the year, and I'm going to turn this over to Andrew.
Yeah, I'll just take a couple of quick minutes. I'm looking forward, obviously, to graduation tomorrow for you, Liam. I think you're probably looking forward to it a little more than I am, but always a great night, and I think the weather's going to cooperate. So I think it's more fun when it's outside, and you kind of get the whole experience of the stadium. And then the SOS night as well, which is, I will see you there between 12 and 5:30. So with a couple of cups of coffee, always an amazing, amazing night. So I think it's a great end to a senior year and a class that's really pretty impressive. We really just want to thank you guys again for a fantastic year. It's not very often that we get students who come to every meeting. The two of you come pretty much to. I think I don't know if you really ever missed a meeting, but you're always here. I think you gave great reports. There are a couple of things that we asked you. Specifically about some of the vaping that was going on, and it's a difficult position to be in, because we're not asking you to kind of rat out but just kind of what's the pulse of the students and what's going on at the high school. And while we all have kids that are in the school, we get a filtered impression, and so I really value your input and your insights that you were able to provide to us. So we've just some quick cards or thanks for you guys, but we really appreciate everything. So
thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Congrats, Liam.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll see you next week.
We had a lot of fun.
Yes.
I think we like coming here every couple weeks.
All right. Well,
it's a good thing to do.
our next meeting's the 21st.
And when you leave tomorrow on the field, you need to shake all these folks' hands.
Absolutely.
When you come
Those are
down.
great.
We've got it all staged. I just want to, don't go the other direction.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Unless you got it.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All
Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
Next, we have our consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented in the packet.
You want to do them together, Madam Chair? The 15th and the 17th, although
Yes.
actually
Let's-
the 15th minutes
that
are
would be
pretty
ideal.
are pretty slim. I will second Ms. Picard's motion to approve both the 15th and the 17th.
Okay, moved by Ms. Picard, seconded by Mr. Trizzi. All in favor?
Aye.
I will abstain for both,
Oh, yeah.
but it still passes.
But hey, welcome back, by the way.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
301. Okay, now for the chair's report. I am not the chair, Amy Mabley. She is at her daughter's very last academic night at Thompson tonight, so she'll be joining us when that is over. But she did give me a report, which I will be very happy to share. The first item, it gives me great pleasure to say that we have approved a contract with the teaching assistants this evening after a very long year of fun-filled evenings. We have a great contract and everybody's happy, so happy to report that. Second, Educator Hall of Fame nominations are due on June 30th. So you can submit those via email or in snail mail, however. There's information on our website if you'd like to nominate anyone. And then the last item is that on June 26th from 5 to 8 p.m. we're going to be having a celebration of Dr. Price, kind of a going away party at the Stevens Estate. So information will be on the North Andover Foundation for Education website, which is northandoverfoundation.org. All are invited, and we hope to see as many people as possible there. And that's all I have.
Woohoo! Superintendent's report. Dr. Gilligan is also at Thompson. Miss Marks, Miss Larkham, we're going to show the summer PD. Do you guys mind coming quickly and explaining what that is for Dr. Gilligan? I'm totally putting you on the spot, but why would it be different than any other year we've worked together? My second to last school committee, you wouldn't want to be any different. So can you explain what the summer PD? Yep.
Nope, the summer PD, see the link right now.
Yeah, perfect.
Yep.
I'll start and you can talk about strategic planning. Okay, we're whispering from what we did on leadership the other day. So this is the first year that we've actually put together something like this. So Cara and I are very excited about this. Dr. Straight was also involved this year, so we included special education. So it was really a joint project, and it's really exciting for our staff. One of the first things that we did was really look at, there was never really a clear delineation in terms of when you got PDPs, when you got in-service credit, and when you might be paid for some work that you did. So we worked on delineating that, and then we set up our summer PD according to those categories. So as you know, teachers need PDPs to recertify. So our biggest group of offerings here are for PDPs. And we have offerings in social emotional learning, which falls under special education. We have teaching and learning, we have technology, there's literacy, there's math and science. So you have, and also with Kristen Ando coming on, we snuck in a sheltered English immersion class as well. So it's really a varied offering. There's also, I think one of the first options that's offered is for our teaching assistants in particular, which goes along with the new contract that was just signed. So that's really exciting. Then we have descriptions for all of those. We're also offering some opportunities for some book studies with which teachers can do in small groups, and they don't have to show up here and clock in any sort of time for that. And then we have some paid work for curriculum writing in literacy, math, and science as well. So we're pretty excited about it. Cara and I are meeting tomorrow to look at, everyone had to fill out either a Google form or an application to let us know what their interest was. So we are going through all of that tomorrow to look at what will run, what has space in it, and get in touch with people. So it was a big undertaking, but it's really exciting to see. You want to talk about that?
Sure. So in the paid piece, as Lorene mentioned, that's been kind of a fluid way that it's worked in the past. So trying to make sure that we're setting up some clear parameters around what that work entails, how do we allocate funds, knowing that we have limited funds for that. So all the offerings for this year are focused around direct curriculum areas that are outlined in the strategic plan. So really making sure that everything is aligned back to the strategic plan. So focusing in on continuation of math curriculum writing and science curriculum, and then the if-then units for, I think it's reading and writing, if I'm correct, and the literacy. So, and again, you can see there's an application, so teachers that are interested have the ability to apply, and then we'll look through that and see, and hopefully have enough budget to pay all those that are interested and give them that training and make sure that it's some quality work at the output of that all teachers can use through the district. And then our last page, we just have some other pieces that will come up outside of the district. So You can see Melrose has a lot of offerings and they spread that out. So maybe even over time, I know I've talked to different districts too, where if we kind of collaborative effort, if we're all running different sessions, to provide those opportunities. So that's one district we know. There's a couple different online courses that teachers have the option to go and spend some time in. And again, some of them are worth, they can pay for some graduate credit or it's just PDPs, so it kind of varies. So just trying to provide a wide range of resources and options for teachers.
If they go to those outside ones, do they come back and share what they've learned?
Hopefully. In some cases. Sometimes in the past, if we've paid for somebody to go for something, they might offer a training throughout our PDs on the early release days. I think these in particular, if they're paying on their own, I think a lot of, so for example, the Joe Bowler and the Math Institutes, I know a lot of the departments, if they have a person attending, they might come back to their department meetings and share out that information. So I think it's if the district is paying, that's one of our expectations is that they're coming back and sharing it. If they're paying out of pocket, then that might not be the exact case, but many of them will come back and share with colleagues.
It's very exciting that this is all in one place. This is the earliest we've ever had this out. I think teachers were very pleased to get this information in one kind of way and to understand very clearly what's what. So thank you guys. You've done incredible work.
Yeah, and it's
a stunning array of offerings. It's really exciting.
Nice. We have a single sheet that's going out to all of our new staff through Carrie Wahlberg, and we're going to link. So we just talked to Hillary this week about putting it on the website so that that's easily to access and available for everybody. So it's not, where was that email? What was that document? Where is it? So make sure that it's really easily accessible for everybody, including our new teachers that we're hiring and new staff.
We offer an RBT session for new teachers that Monday, right before all the teachers come back. And we started last year doing a literacy training one day during August for our elementary teachers. Any new teachers, and we'll continue that again this year. So new teachers are asked to attend if they can, and they did last year. So, and I've been in touch with a number of them already for this year, so we're excited about that as well. Thank you guys.
And then does Carrie keep track of the PDPs? Is that part of, like, once a teacher has earned them, does that go into part of their file? I'm just curious how that.
We have my learning plan, so all of this is recorded in my learning plan.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's under, so teachers themselves for recertification need to keep track of that. They have the option of loading everything into my learning plan. Anything on the district side that they've signed up through the district will log in
Gotcha.
for them.
Okay.
The other part of my superintendent, Mr. Neely, has some information he'd like to share with you. Just thought we'd give you an update.
So we got this yesterday, right, Jen?
We got it yesterday. We were dancing.
We utilized New England Medical Billing to help us with the Medicaid reimbursement, the reporting. And what we're showing up here are the last 3 years prior to this year. We've talked about the efforts that the special education department has done, and Gilly and Jen were out getting people to sign to allow us to report. And so in FY15, the annual cost report amount was $95,000. In FY16, it was $86,000. In FY17, $101,000. And the report we got yesterday was that the estimate is for $292,000. And I have a quote here. Basically, you have done significantly better in one quarter this year than you did in all previous years. I talk about your efforts to other schools all the time. You made an unbelievable difference to North Andover's Medicaid reimbursement. And then she's just reminding us that it gets paid out from the previous year. So,
The exciting part of that is also that our full payment for the fourth quarter, which $292 is the year it comes, was actually $352,000 because we got an additional $60,000 because we get another part. So our full, we'll start the year with funds for curriculum in an account of about $330,000. We can start spending July 1. If you remember, the town approved our Medicaid to go up to $400. So we will easily be able to spend the $400. We will easily have the $400 to spend. And it is our expectation, and we've already laid the groundwork with the town manager to increase that maximum to $500, which I actually think is a doable number for us. Significant curricular difference. If you remember, 3 years ago we had $0. The first year we didn't hire a teacher and we had $55,000, and then $250 this year, and now we are looking at $400 next year. Remember, this is a town fund that is restricted only for curriculum resources.
That's amazing. It is.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. I know a lot of doors were knocked on
I have also agreed to come back up and knock on doors with Dr. Gilligan if he'll have me.
We will hold you to that.
Okay.
Make a note.
That's all for me. Oh, other than I do want to acknowledge Dr. Gilligan before he comes in the room. He sacrificed today in a very significant way at the softball game. If you want to look on my Twitter, you will see that he took a softball in the back of his car window. So he has 1-800-54-GIANT or Safe Light coming tomorrow. I want to be on the record that I told him not to park there. But that being said, he is a big supporter of North Andover softball, who won today 4-1. So maybe it was worth the broken window. And I think that that is a total testament to his commitment to the North Andover Public Schools.
The window. Not covered by insurance.
Not ours.
Front window, yes. Back inside's no.
We have school building committee update.
Sure, why not? We haven't met since I think the 17th, so that following weekend, a handful of us, Mr. Mealy and Dr. Price, myself, and the vice chair, Ms. Minicucci, traveled down to central Pennsylvania to the factory where the modules were being built. It was quite an experience to see the buildings. Well, one of the buildings in particular was basically constructed inside a huge warehouse. And it's amazing to think that they built it there, and they're gonna then take it apart, and they're gonna ship it up here in a couple weeks. We found it very informative, definitely worth going down there. Saw a lot of horse and buggies. We were in the middle of Amish country. It was good. And to that end, we are still on schedule and still under budget. The first modules will arrive probably on Tuesday the 26th. For the first ones, we put in place on the 27th. The first building consists of 20 different modular buildings. So it'll be like 6, 7, and 7 the first week. And then a few weeks later, I think the 17th of July, the other 20 will come up. So it's exciting. We're there. The foundations are just about in right now. If you go up there, obviously it's a serious construction site, but one of the foundations is finished. The other one is just about finished. Yeah, I just can't say enough about the team we have together. I mean, this is definitely a joint school town project. We meet every week for a couple hours in this room, usually in this room, and obviously Jen and Jim are there, and we're giving our input, but. Steve Foster, John Pagazzi, Ray Santilli, always at these meetings, and it's a team effort to hold, the architect and the contractor and the OPM keep their feet to the fire on this stuff, and we just have a great team in place. And it's been a lot of hours to put into it, probably more hours than I expected when I signed on to this, but it's been a great experience to see it unfold, and it's amazing to think that in 3 months that building is going to be up and functional and have the support for it. So I'm very excited about it. I don't know if Jen and Jim want to add to the trip.
Just other than Mary Lou is doing an amazing job
Yes.
on her blog.
Yes.
So if anyone's interested, go check it out. She's got pictures from Pennsylvania, pictures from here, her commentary. It's phenomenal.
I don't need to get. There's always like little hiccups in any construction project, and there's been a few along the way. But just seeing people rally and be creative with solutions, and like I said, Mary Lou and the team up there, they're at ground zero, and they have to adapt to what's going on up there, and the parents just understanding this is short-term pain for long-term gain. It's after we had a school building committee meeting last night, and I was standing outside afterwards with one of the school building committee members, and just thinking what that place is going to look like when that's done, and then the field is done in a couple of years. It is going to be a jewel, a real jewel. So thank all of you for supporting that, and thank the town for supporting it as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, moving on to old business. I'll ask Ms. Marks to come back to the table and talk about the Learn Anywhere project.
So we are here to talk again about alternative school days. Let Jim get the slides up.
Do we expect snow sometime?
But we are feeling the ramifications of it right now.
Do you guys all, do you want to have everyone come up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Bring chairs.
Come on up. Yeah. missing a couple of people who may stroll in as we're in the middle of this. If not, we can pinch hit for them. So two of our people, Deb Gilmartin is our upper elementary representative, and she is at Thompson Arts Night. And Andrea Van Horn is our middle school representative, and she has a student at Thompson. So hopefully they will be here. But just a reminder that the Department of Ed defines alternative school days as possible solutions to scheduling issues posed by inclement weather. We went over these before, but again, I just want to refresh you on some of the requirements. So the Department of Ed wants us to make sure that we're looking at meeting the requirements for structured learning time, and that what we are doing is accessible to all students, that we have appropriate teacher oversight, and that we are taking into account various circumstances, for example, access to technology, electrical outages, things like that. That we communicate clearly the circumstances for an alternative school day, and that this is approved by the school committee. Again, the Department of Ed does not need to approve this. We, again, modeled this after Wakefield's Learn Anywhere. And just a reminder again, because I do hear, just as people are talking about it, the term blizzard bag used, and I'm actively trying to correct that, because blizzard bag is a very different connotation. That was the work that was sent home, due the next day, based on like 80 or 85% compliance, and then it's counted as a school day. And what we're looking at is something very different. We're really trying to incorporate this into more 21st century learning types of opportunities. So just a reminder of that. So following the last meeting, we formed a committee, and we were looking at trying to get representatives from various parts of the district. So obviously, I'm on the committee. Cara is our STEM coordinator on the committee. Dr. Straight has been a member of the committee because certainly special ed issues would be a concern, something we needed to discuss. Mr. Landry is principal on the committee. He could not be here tonight. Amy O'Terry is from the high school. She is the department head, and she is also a Wakefield parent. So we have some parents here who are going to give us a perspective from that view as well. Andrea Van Horn should be here shortly. She's from the middle school, social studies teacher. She is a North Andover parent. Deb Gilmartin is an upper elementary teacher. Diana Beckley is representing the primary teachers, and she is also a North Andover parent. And Ryan Landry is here. He is a specialist teacher, and he is also a union co-president. So we tried to kind of hit as many types of constituents as we could. So one of the things that we did talk about was looking into possible names. And it was really a challenge, because I think that we all felt that Wakefield's name, Learn Anywhere, was a really great name. So at the bottom here, actually, and I don't know if you could click on that briefly, the ASD names. Mr. Landry, who loves to do this, came up with a whole big list. Oh, not going to work. There's a whole big list of names there. But when we looked at them as a working group, some of our concerns were that we really didn't want the name related to snow or weather, because, again, we're looking at the 21st century learning piece. It wasn't going to be just about the snow days. And we also didn't really want a technology sort of title in there, because we do have to look at the diversity in our community and everyone's equal access to technology. So as it was actually one of the days that we were in here working, we looked at some possibilities, and this Mr. Landry came up with RAISE Days, which stood for Remote and Individualized School Experiences, which we felt left out the weather and left out the technology. So that's a proposal that we have in terms of a name, certainly open for discussion.
And we can certainly provide the list of Mr. Landry.
Yes, sorry. Link that.
Done, Mr. Landry.
The other Mr. Landry.
Yeah, the other Mr. Landry.
Principal
This one's
Landry.
one and done. Raise days.
So we also felt that it also worked well with the whole social emotional learning initiative that we have here in the district, like keeping everything together like that. So we do have a draft website, and on that website, we're trying to, like Wakefield had recommended, get parents used to looking at the website. So we have our summer reading lists up there right now, our superintendent's summer reading challenge. We have the bedtime math, which has started with the Eureka Math. We have the kindergarten welcome bag pages, so the kids at screening got their bags again, and all the pages for math and literacy are scanned and are linked there, so parents who maybe lost the bag or didn't make it to screening or whatever, the books that they get in hand are obviously not up there, but everything else is. We also are putting a link to North Andover Reads. North Andover Reads next year will be associated with Race Amity. We have a lot of energy around that right now. and then also the North Andover website link. And I don't know if, can you click on that? You may not be able to open it because it's just a,
I tried opening it.
it didn't, yeah, I think it's closed right now because we didn't want it to be public. But we do have, those are already up on that website. So if we move forward, we will continue to build that. But those are the ways for families and students to look at the website and get used to it this summer. So the committee is going to share some of the issues that we talked about as a group that either came up here at school committee or came up as we talked about problems that we could foresee, possible solutions. So, and those who are parents either in North Andover or Wakefield will also comment from that perspective. So we're going to start with Cara, who is district perspective and also a North Andover parent.
So through our discussions and also talking to different staff around the district, as well as different parents that I've been in touch with, talking about what would those assignments look like and what are our expectations for student work during those days. We know we don't want it to be busy work. We don't want it to just be, a worksheet that, they're practicing 10 more problems, something that's busy work on any end. So really getting at, again, like we mentioned, the 21st century skills. What are some of the independent practice that students can do outside of school to really further their learning and further their understanding of different concepts? We also had some good discussions around choice. So having choice in different areas, whether it's what topics they're doing, maybe in elementary classroom, if they're doing reading, picking different books to read, or having kind of a choice board, a menu board of different options where they're touching upon different subject matters. It also could be project-based, so things that they're already researching and studying and working on in the classroom, and they're having some time outside of the classroom experience to further that. So really a wide range of different topics, not necessarily just one assignment for every student, and like the RAISE kind of acronym there goes, that it's really individualized, that each student might have a slightly different assignment each day for these, and that's okay. As a parent, again, with little one in first grade, moving to second, and one coming up the ranks, I think there's some opportunity. We also talked too about the due date. So it's not, like we mentioned, it's not due that next day. So even things like going and visiting a museum and kind of taking our learning outside of home, it doesn't have to necessarily be on the day. Having some flexibility with the timelines will further some opportunities and maybe get some students outside of their own house and kind of learn in different ways. So as a parent, I think that's really exciting that we know sometimes sitting at home actually on those multiple days off, provided we have power, they get long, and it's nice to have some different ideas up your sleeve. I think the superintendent challenge have been nice to kind of give some ideas, and I think this is kind of a next step with it. So it'd be nice to touch on a wide range of different activities. And with little ones, I think some of the concern is that, how are they going to do it independently? So really working with staff to create assignments that, maybe have a quick, give the instructions to a student and then let them kind of go off and work independently and see what they can come up with.
Just to add to that a little bit, both Cara and I, in our work with elementary teachers, for writing, we have the writing workshop, we have the reading workshop. They have done some PD around math workshop. We're really looking at less teacher talk, more student practice. And this really ties in, hey, come on up. This is Andrea Van Horn from the middle school.
I was just there. It was good.
So it really focuses on that practice that students need. Again, we often, when the literacy coaches and I are doing trainings, you don't get better at tennis, you don't get better at golf, you don't get better at those things that you want to learn how to do by listening to someone talk to you about how to do it. You get better by practicing doing it yourself. So this ties in with that as well. So, all right, Dr. Straight from the special education point of view.
All right, thank you. So certainly one of the big issues that we considered was relative to the specific related services and direct services that we're required by law to give to our special education students. So as Cara pointed out, the individualized piece of it is significantly important to ensuring that we're providing services for our students. So what we discussed as a committee, a piece of that would be ensuring that the work that those students could do first would be the work that is relative to their individual education plans or their IEPs. Some of the other areas that we looked at was there's a a variety of different types of software programs that we utilize for students that they could potentially access at home and work on their goals in that manner. The other piece of it is the speech and language services, occupational therapy, physical therapy services, and what we would look at would be adding some of those times on over the course of other school days so that ultimately they wouldn't miss any of their services. And we can do that by looking at schedules and working on adjusting those different pieces. So those are certainly considerations that we've had, and we're working together as a team to answer those questions. And looking at what some of the outside towns are doing as well.
So when Dr. Straight mentioned that they would do the work through special ed first, so for example, an inclusion special needs student, I don't know if you recall the last time I presented, we talked about, depending on the grade level, you might have 20 minutes of work, or high school 30 minutes per subject area, so that students who were receiving special education support would do the work from the special education teacher first. For that time, so that they're not having to do more work than other students, so they're not being punished because they have additional support services. So just to clarify that a little bit. All right, Diana, from the primary point of view?
So in terms of how to get this information out to parents, we thought about doing it at open house, in our Welcome Back to School newsletters, and then again in our weekly newsletters or blogs that go home as well, just to get the information out as much as possible so they are used to seeing it, so they can click on the website ahead of time so they're not all of a sudden on the first day we have no school trying to manage the website or trying to see it for the first time. So really giving them time to, opportunities to encourage them to go on the website and see it and save it, encourage them to save it in their links and their bookmarks too on their computer. In terms of aligning it across the district, we heard from Wakefield one of the things that was helpful was to have similar things throughout the grade level through town. So to have, for instance, I teach first grade, so to have everything in first grade be similar, not exactly the same from building to building, but have a similar theme. The menu board have similar topics on it. And then per different school to have slightly different assignments for that given school. So to have the majority of it to be the same across the district. As a parent, I'm in support of this. I think it would be very helpful to not only have something to do with our little ones. I have a kindergartner and a first grader, but also to know when school's getting out, to be able to schedule the summer events, to be able to look at that end of it, to be able to have that definite end date for your vacations and your camps and things. So.
And Deb is not here. Deb was going to talk with Diana, but what she was going to talk about was the kind of some consistency amongst the elementary schools. So one of the things that I did learn talking to Wakefield just a couple of months ago, as they had gotten into it, that they have different elementary schools as well, and there was some controversy about having some consistency among those elementary schools, which they didn't do initially. So that was what that piece was. Ms. Van Horn from the middle school. And I will put up your...
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
So, I have my little elements here for the kiddos. So I decided to survey the kids because I feel like they're such an important part of this whole process. We're making decisions based on them, and so we might as well ask them what they think. I have some really smart kids in my class, Mr. McDevitt, and I've had some really smart kids in my class. Everyone else. So, surprisingly, almost 97% of them thought that this was a good idea. And then I asked them, well, tell me why you think it's a good idea. So today, just you wait. So, here we go. And I had to write down exactly what they said because you can't always put into words what they're thinking. A change like this is needed. I don't think that we have to get out on the 27th, or that Andover has to do 2 Saturdays. I just don't like it. Okay? I like this idea because you would be able to have something to do instead of sitting around and being bored. Goes with what you said. I like that if the school says we are getting out on a particular day, we actually do get out on that day. You can start planning camps, vacations, babysitters, activities more in advance. It's like they're hearing things from their parents. I like how this idea puts a fun twist on snow or power outage days. The work could be cooking instead of paper and pencil worksheets, but still count as school. I like this because you get to wear PJs. I like that in June. This is my favorite. I like that in June, I won't be sticking to my chair and sweating 2 weeks longer than I need to. From the mouths of babes. So, yeah, I know. Certainly not my children. But also as a parent, I empathize with what you're saying. I have to be a kindergartner, a fourth grader, and a second grader, and they go to Brooks camp during the summer, but they're not going to be able to start until the fourth day in, which at the end of the day isn't bad, but it still would have been nice if we didn't have the 9 snow days and if there was some consistency in their learning. And on the teacher side, who doesn't have air conditioning, I don't want to be sweating in my chair for an extra 2 weeks either. Just saying. So, that's it.
One interesting thing from, because Andrea shared all the survey information with me, and I'm just going to put a plug in for science, is she gave them some different ideas about what they might want to do on that day, and the biggest majority, and this is 6th grade, so a plug for the 6th grade science curriculum that went in, good work, was science. That's what they wanted to do, hands-on science experiments. So I thought that was really interesting and really positive.
Be careful
so.
that we send home the right assignments.
All right.
Boy, you can take that, yeah.
All right. So we're going to go back here to Amy O'Terry from the high school, and also she will speak as a person who has lived with us in Wakefield this year.
So one of the things that was really important when we were talking as a group was, as Diana mentioned, was the consistency. So one of the things that's really important for teachers in different schools, same grade level or same subject matter, or different teams, have the chance at the beginning of the school year to plan, to get as much of the work done at the beginning of the school year as possible, so that way it's ready to go and we can have the information available for parents to preview as needed. One of the things that we talked about, and this is the way that Wakefield has done it, is that teams of teachers or grade levels of teachers have created Google Docs, which are shared by school and by grade level on the website that will be created, so that teachers can access that and see the assignments. It could be a list of choices, it could be links to teacher websites, or Google Classroom, depending upon what the teachers in that team or group have decided to do. Communication is really important as well, so as soon as the parents are able to see that information, they know what to expect when that day comes. And it's also important that the communication, prior to whenever the first day might be, that there's an extra reminder from the principal of that school or from the teacher going home saying, hey, by the way, looks like we might have a day off tomorrow. Here's, again, where to find all the information for what your student needs to do during the day.
So if these are up, say, in September or October, if families wanted to work ahead on this, could they do their alternative learning days, like during whatever, Thanksgiving break or something like that? And like have it in the bank, so to speak?
Well,
I'm just thinking because kids hate to be told, like, don't read chapter 2. We're going to discuss chapter 1, don't read chapter 2. So, like, my kids would always go ahead and read the whole book.
I think there's work, from what I've seen, there's work that's up there and prepared ahead of time. But there's also work, like when Cara was mentioning.
Right.
So, for example, I was up in a 5th grade classroom today, and I was looking at their writing for the Revolutionary War, all the research. It was fabulous. So if it looked like there was going to be a snow day during that time, that teacher might actually recommend they do some research work according to that. So I would be cautious about that, because the work might be, although there's always going to be a backup. Like when I was principal at an alternative school, I had an emergency. Every teacher had 3 days emergency work, which may not be absolutely relevant to what they were doing that week. But God forbid you were in a car accident or something like that. You're not getting your neighbor to drive in your plants. Do you know what I mean? So we have all of this ready, but there may be more relevant, timely work that is actually what the teacher will want to have done. So I think that's something we have to.
It's a live document.
Yeah.
So it's always being updated with changes if they need to add something. As a parent who has lived through this, Wakefield's getting out of school on June 19th. If we had had snow days, we would also be getting out of school on June 27th. So I get out a week before, or my kids get out a week before I do. I have a 2nd grader and a 7th grader, so I have the middle school and the elementary school perspective, and they look very different because they're two very different schools, very different ages. 2nd grade is, there's a lot of choice, so they do a lot of, there are a lot of Chromebooks in Wakefield, so they do a lot of online practice with math. They use Prodigy, Epic for reading and things like that. So those are listed as choices of things they can do on our snow days. Additionally, my 2nd grader, his teacher, as we got to like the 5th or 6th snow day, she started to send packets home that was stuff that was more relevant to what they were working on. So they were working on persuasive essays, and so they had to write an essay, why should we keep these work snow days? So things like that were more relevant. As far as 7th grade goes, again, very different. They were expected, they got an assignment from each of their subject teachers as well as their specialists. The expectation was about 20 to 30 minutes per subject area, and it was more project-based. So it wasn't necessarily something they were currently working on in class, but skills that they would be developing in science or math or ELA. In math, some of the things they did, they had a list of choices, create, they were learning about percentages, create a one-page ad that shows a % off for an item, things like that. Science, it was a list of projects, a list of at-home science experiments. Try this out, and then they had a little lab sheet that they filled in and they just electronically shared with their teacher. For me, it was manageable. In my house, I just kind of set this, all right, 4 o'clock, we're gonna shut everything off, we're gonna, do our Learn Anywhere work, get it out of the way. The teachers were always very consistent in communicating that it is not due the next day. That was from administration, school principals, each individual teacher, that was the message. It is not due the next day. In middle school, they do use online grading similar to Power School. And so the due dates, the teachers would put it in, so you would know when the due date was. Some teachers, it was a week. Some teachers, it was the end of the term. It really depended on the teachers. I would say that was probably for me, the thing that was not consistent enough was a due date. It varied from teacher to teacher on the same team. So my suggestion would be that a team of teachers all kind of set the same due date, so that way those kids know. And again, it was the consistent communication from all levels. We got emails from the principal if there was going to be a snow day or, thoughts of a snow day. And the teachers were accessible on the day. So in their email the day before, they would say, if you need to reach me, please send me an email, with the expectation that, of course, if they lost power, they wouldn't be able to necessarily contact you back. But that was helpful as well, because the teachers, if they did have a question, if it wasn't something they could do on their own, you could just email the teacher.
Thank you. Mr. Landry.
Good evening, everyone. So I think I'll start with the union perspective, because when I first joined the committee, one of the first things I did was get in touch with the union president from Wakefield to see if they had any issues implementing this plan and if the union had any concerns about this. And it seemed, well, first of all, the teachers were very supportive of it. It seems like it hasn't been a problem for the teachers. They've liked it. But the caveat with that was that they planned well in advance for it. And since it's the beginning of May, and I sincerely hope we have many, many months before we have to deal with a day like this, I would say it seems like that's the process that's been going on in North Andover, and Lorraine's been doing an excellent job thinking about this already for months. So it seems like that concern that was in Wakefield, we're dealing with ahead of time here. So hopefully that won't be a problem. The one small thing that they asked for in Wakefield was they had concerns about teacher evaluations on this new process, because it's new for everybody. It's going to be new for the principals. It's going to be new for the teachers. So the concern was nobody wanted to get a bad evaluation on something that's a pretty new process in Massachusetts. Not many of us who are teaching learned about this when we were in school, how to make alternative snow days. So they asked for this process not to be part of the evaluation. They've only done it 1 year, so I know it hasn't been in the first year. I don't know what their plan is going forward. I think we could work it out. I feel like we have a good relationship and we can discuss things going forward, but at least definitely in the first year, the teachers asked not to have it part of their evaluation because it's new to everybody and it's a learning process.
I don't think we'll be sending Mr. Cushing to your house for a while.
Okay. Walk through on alternative days, that'd be interesting. So that was the only concern from the union perspective. And as a specialist, one of the things about these alternative days is that everybody, no matter who they are, is going to have work or an assignment that they have to set. And I've actually been kind of excited thinking about some of them because I only see my kids 45 minutes a week. And this, even 5 minutes of personal time for them to have individual time to devote to music is, if I gave every kid in my class 5 minutes to devote to music individually, to sing a song, and it would take half the year just to have each kid sing a song for 5 minutes. So it's great to have some outside time. Some things I was thinking of, and some things I saw in Wakefield were sing a song about the snow to your family, come up with your own song. One thing I was thinking about was, this is obviously more than the time allotment, but if a kid was interested in going outside their house, because you don't have to do it on that day, you could assign go to a concert. If you're in an older grade, you could do a short write-up. If you're in a younger grade, kindergarten, you could go to a concert, have your parents take a picture of you going to a concert. Stuff like that, where in 45 minutes once a week, I can't get done in the classroom. But if it was an individual option for a student who wanted to go to a concert, that could be something that would be beneficial for them. That I wouldn't obviously assign that because I don't know the family life of every kid at home. Some kids may not be able to do it. But it would be great if it was an individual choice. That might be something that, you know, the kids would look forward to doing. So I'm actually kind of excited of trying to be creative and come up with some ideas that I can't get done in that 45 minutes a week I have with the kids.
If only we had an award-winning music program.
One of the other things we talked about relative to specialists, and I think this came up with Wakefield as well, was posting specialist schedules and all, because sometimes it'd be difficult for parents, no matter what level, whether it's elementary, even up through high school, to say, oh, it's a day, whatever, or does, you know, what do I need to look at? Does my student have art today or music today? So find a way to post that, and that came out of some conversations that we had as well. So just trying to think of those angles as well. And then Mr. Landry is not here, but just to reiterate, this does include all employees in the district. So food services, I think I had mentioned before, like they would have the option to take the day and have to work, you know, after the last day of school. They could give extra time when they're back in school, helping to stock shelves or do things like that. They could do some trainings online in terms of food services and management. So there are different options. ETLs, school psychologists have jobs. Principals are part of, at least in Wakefield, which seems like a good model, part of auditing what's going on with the teachers, with the students, everything's going on. So there really is a job for everyone, and that's something that we would look at as well, continuing. So if we go ahead with this, our current calendar for 2018-19 has the last day for 180 school days is Monday, June 17th. So I know last time we met, Dr. Price had proposed that after 4 snow days, that would bring us to Friday, June 21st. After that point, the alternative school day would go into effect for any subsequent school cancellations. If there were no school cancellations after those 4 days, all the work would be done and we'd be ready to go for the next year. So that's what we're proposing. And if the school committee is in agreement with this moving forward, Cara and I have already started to work on the district-wide PD schedule, and we have slotted in some time in late August and early September for teachers at all levels to work on putting together this work. We would have another consultation with Dr. Smith. I know that she recently sent a survey. A friend of mine is a coach in Wakefield, a literacy coach, so she mentioned to me that a survey came out recently to get the teacher's perspective.
They sent a parent.
Did they? Okay. So I'm sure she's going to have even more information than we've been able to get to date based on the both employee and community surveys. Developing that plan for communication with all school employees, for example, the food service, the nurses, all of that, so not just the teaching staff. Assignments uploaded to the Raise Days or whatever the alternative school day will be called website in the early fall, and then a lot of PR to notify and familiarize families with what's going on. So that is
What we're specifically asking, and this is the second time we've discussed this, is a vote of support from the school committee. That's what we're proposing. We didn't quite know how to frame the motion, so we.
Is it a vote of support, or we have to actually?
I think you have to approve it.
Yeah,
It
we
has
can
to be
approve
approved.
it.
I don't mean
We
support,
have to
sorry.
decide to do this.
Yeah, you need to approve it.
We need to approve it.
That's a DEES requirement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Just a couple of quick questions, and I'm sure it's going to be rolled out in some of the logistics, and I wasn't here for the last meeting, but I would just like to make sure that however we're distributing this out, I mean, obviously, if we have power outages and things of that, kids can't necessarily access computers, but a lot of kids can access, a website on their phones or links of all of that stuff. And sometimes I just find that some of them don't necessarily always pass through correctly. So, if you're on your computer, right, when you try to, so I would just, challenge you, to work with Mr. Grant, to make sure that it is. All right,
So the
okay.
Raceamity website, she made it so that you could get it on your phone and it looked different than it did on your computer. Like, you could read it, and she's
Okay.
done that with the sample that we've done.
And the
for
nice
this as
thing
well.
is,
Yeah.
Okay.
Mobile versus desktop.
Right, I didn't know if there was and I don't know if anybody does this in the country, but I was curious if there might be an app that,
That
would-
I can't tell you.
Okay, I'm just, just kind of thinking a little bit outside the box. I know we're kind of, NAPS app, yeah, something like that. And then, I don't know if you can answer this today, and I think it's probably a little bit of a union question, but is there any impact for anybody regarding salary or retirement or any of that would be factored into that? And I don't know if that, because let's say we lost 4 days of the year. Technically, the teachers, everybody else would be working 176, or one.
No, that we would consider them still working, and
They're
it's
still-
really
they're still
just
counting.
about the paychecks. I mean,
Okay.
I guess the only folks who potentially could lose any is our daily employees, so like our
Okay.
ISS, because we wouldn't be hiring subs.
Right.
But
Okay.
in terms of our full-time or even salaried employees,
No retirement,
Yeah.
no benefits, no anything like
Correct.
that. Okay, all right. Awesome. This is very good. I think, Mrs. Van Horn, you have a very scientific study here. And I'm sure you might have had somebody rallying the troops, but,
There was one young man
right.
in charge.
Shady, I'm sure.
I'm really excited about the timing of this because our communication has improved so much in the last few years. Our website has improved so much in the last few years. Obviously, our accessibility to Chromebooks and our kids' use of technology, which this isn't all going to be technology required, but all their skills have improved so much in the last couple of years. So I'm really excited that, if we had brought this up 3 or 5 years ago, it really wouldn't have been possible. So I'm pleased. I'm thankful for all the work you guys have done, and I'm excited to try it. I've heard a lot of positive things. People are, especially this week. This week was cooler, but at this time of year, people are really excited about this. I have my in-laws here from Virginia, and they're like, "Wow, that's brilliant." So I'm looking forward to how it goes. Looking forward to approving this.
Where were you last year with this? Need it now. I just have a question, a procedural one. It's listed on our agenda as an update, and I'm wondering if we can actually vote on this tonight. I'm sure we can vote on it next 2 weeks. It's not a big deal, but it's not listed on the agenda as a second reading for vote. I know we talked about it before, and
that's why we put it under old business, so, yeah.
I don't think it matters if we vote next week. Next
The
time.
21st?
I mean, I think it's going
I
to
think
get
it would be
approval.
helpful for this group to get a straw poll just so they could keep go forward.
I like
We could
their
do
chances.
Is that what?
I like their chances.
Yeah, okay.
So I do have a couple questions. The individualized to students. I'd like to get some teacher perspective on how much more work that is. If you've got 80 students, you're talking about several different assignments.
Yeah, so I started to think about it a little bit and just kind of came up with a menu of choices of things that might be a little bit more challenging for some and a little bit easier for others. And just, so I have things that's like, you could go out and do something. I have this sort of like in-home, sorry, not chemistry, but like cooking and science things, like building stuff, Legos, Play-Doh, you know, like something a little more hands-on that I definitely can't do with 95 students. And then I have some more thoughts on just traditional, like pen to paper, written response, read this. So, I mean, I think if there's choice involved, that the kid can take ownership of their learning and kind of decide for themselves what's going to be a best fit for them on that day.
So it's really more choice. It's not that student A, you're going to do this assignment, student B, you're going to do this. Okay. All right. I misunderstood that.
I mean, not for me. I don't know, Lorraine, if you're...
The other thing that ties into this is that for all our teachers, we're always looking at differentiation and what's going to meet each student's needs, so that choice is there. And our teachers do differentiate now, so they are looking at, it isn't always the same 25 assignments, so.
Okay. And then for the special education, what about the kids with the one-to-one aids? How does that work?
So they're at their home environment, so they wouldn't necessarily, they're gonna have the same type of application in the home as they would any other day. So if you're
But if
thinking.
the parents are working and there's no aid, or
Right,
they
so
can't
if you're
do
thinking about
anything.
the work, when we look at the differentiation of the instruction, or we have some students that are more medically fragile, that have more cognitive needs, those are some of the students that we would think about in terms of adding time on during the course of other days to increase the work that they need with regard to like their speech and language or OT or PT pieces.
So they wouldn't really be doing, it sounds like they wouldn't be doing, they'd just be getting their services added on, but they wouldn't actually be doing
Well,
work
there would
at
be
home.
work that they could do based on what their needs are. Again, if they have, you know, some of the access to the software pieces, or depending on what's in their IEP and things that they might have for home services that are there already in place.
So when I did talk to the SPED director in Wakefield about this, and Dr. Straight and I have talked about it, and she said a lot of the parents, because that was a concern, I remember you asked last time, and that a lot of the parents of students who have significant disabilities would be home with their students, and a lot of them are pretty engaged with the students and would work with us. If there was a case that was a little more challenging, we would be looking at more like compensatory services, whether it was,
That's exactly what I was
whether it was
Okay.
during the school year, or a lot of those students also receive summer services, so it could be during the summer that some of that time would be added on. Does that help?
Great, yes.
Okay.
Much better, thanks.
Thanks.
And then the kids with no access to technology, how is that individualized, or what does that look like?
So what we want to do is make sure, that's part of why we didn't want technology in the title,
Right.
that it's not all technology-based. So we talked about even at the elementary school, as a start out, that we might be giving some paper assignments so that they're clear on what it is. If they don't have technology at home, again, it's not due the next day, so that they can access technology at school with support of their teachers. So really looking at those kinds of options, so it's not like everybody has to have some sort of device with them that snow day.
Yep.
So.
Okay. And about how many hours would you say they're spending doing this?
I would say for my elementary school, he probably spent about, their assignment was to choose 2 things off of the list that the teacher had sent, or 2 things from the packet. I would say he probably took about, 30 to 45 minutes. But he's kind of a quick student. My older son, he's in 7th grade, it was probably about 20 to 30 minutes per subject.
And are they doing work in every single subject, including the related arts, or just what's due for that day, like whatever
What's due
subjects
for
they have that
so
day?
whatever, so they, in Wakefield, in 7th grade, they see all of their major subject areas every day, and then they alternate their specialists. They're on a 6-day schedule, so whatever specialist they would have had that day would be the assignment that they would do for that teacher.
And that's why we talked about posting that specialist schedule, because that could get
Right.
confusing. And sometimes middle school kids aren't on top of that every day, like looking at that, especially if they're at home, and so making that a little more easy.
And I love the idea of starting it after day 4, like giving some snow days, but then it's a nice balance.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Has anyone talked about physical education and shoveling?
I was talking about that today already.
That should be required.
I didn't see that, but I think that should be in the list. It's required in my house.
Any other questions? So I'd just like to thank all of these teachers and administrators who have worked with me on this, because really their input has been important, and they have gone out into the schools to talk to the other teachers, so it wasn't, just these people. We also mentioned at leadership to share that this meeting was happening at school committee, and that teachers might be getting some more information soon. So once you do vote, we can hopefully let them know before school's out what to prepare for in terms of, we want to let them know that early on PD time is going to be spent, so they're not doing this on their own time, that we're going to provide support, guidelines, all of that during professional development time in August and early September. All right.
Did Deb want to add in?
Do you want to add anything?
I don't. Sorry, I was late to the party.
Well, they
but-
knew why.
I was at another one at the Thompson, but I just, from a teacher perspective at the elementary level, and I think Helen alluded to it, like kids have become so savvy with technology and how to access it. And even for kids in my class that don't necessarily have everyday technology, they're just so much more comfortable with it, and they really are getting to the point where they blend it nicely with other things. So I think that it really is a win-win, because you're giving them something to do, and it's something meaningful that adds to their day. And I think, as far as communication with parents, as an elementary teacher, you do it all the time anyway, so I think it's just a win-win.
Just another little plug, in that 5th grade class I was in this morning, it was interesting because we've started the keyboarding program at the elementary school, trying to get kids more used to and learning keyboarding, which we thought was really important. And it's, it's a struggle. It's another thing to try to fit in, but it's been happening. And the teacher pointed out to me that she gave the students the choice to either handwrite or type their research projects and the displays, and only 2 students this time chose to handwrite it. And there's always going to be some students. I'm much better handwriting than I am typing. I'm kind of a dyslexic typer, but it was interesting. She said it was a real shift, and she credited it to the keyboarding program. So I think some of the things that we're putting into place we're really starting to see make a difference. So.
Great.
This could also take a lot of stress off of first-year superintendents.
Yeah. All right. Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
We're just lining it up to make it easy for you, Dr. Gilligan.
Next week.
Yeah, no problem.
Yep. So we have some very patient folks here, so I'm going to suggest that we skip down and take things out of order and go down to the annual health presentation next. Under new business, we'll go back.
Like that. She's in the chair. She's always like making her own rules. Love it. Right.
Nice to show and tell tonight.
It's a joint effort.
I leaned over.
What does?
The one on the right.
All good? Everyone stretched after the presentation? So before I start, I just want to give kudos to the nurses staff too for the Medicaid reimbursement. Huge amount of money, and because of the great documentation, we have this health services program, and we're able to document very clearly every time that the student is served in the nurse's office. And starting next year, not only students on IEP, but every student with Medicaid will be able to get reimbursement for nursing services. So we're already ready and primed for that, so that's great. So thanks. Every year, we're able to give this presentation for the nursing services, where we have a unique position in the district, in that we combine primary care, illness and injury assessment with education, as well as public health with surveillance and disease prevention. So I'm going to use this. Here we go. I usually start with how many health office visits we've had each year. And again, we're just about 50,000. We'll finish at the end of June. I thought it would be lower this year than last year because we're not counting when students come for snacks anymore, because we've already, established that there's a big need there, and we've been able to give the numbers to Erica Murphy for some grants that she's going to be able to get, and we have the food rescue program, so we stopped collecting about 4,500 students, but we're still going to finish at 50,000 this year. And May was crazy. May had so many seasonal allergies and injuries on the playground, so May was the first time we've ever hit 7,000 office visits. The most we've ever had before that was about 5,200, so the nurses were extremely busy the month of May. Some of the scheduled medication doses delivered, that students, there's a lot of psychotropic medications this year, insulin, anticonvulsants, PRN medications. Those are medications that are as needed. For example, a student with asthma that needs their inhaler, or EpiPen, we've had to give 4 doses this year. The return to class rate for the nurses remains very high. That's our goal. We want to keep all of our students in school. That's one of the main functions of the school nurse. Parent communications, I just wanted to point that out because the home connection with nurses and parents is huge and very strong. They know what's going on in the home, if there's someone, if their aunt has cancer, if there's a divorce going on. So there's really a strong connection there, as well as the parent and family being reassured that their child with some chronic illness knows that there's a nurse in every single building. Something that happened just yesterday, the middle school and one of the elementary schools received iPods because with all the new technology, students with diabetes, they have these continuous blood glucose monitors. And one of our nurses, the parent would text the nurse because at home the parent has the continuous blood glucose monitor, knows what the blood sugars are, and she would text the nurse. Well, now with an iPod on the nurse's desk, now she can also track the student. And that way the student doesn't have to come to the nurse, they can stay in class and the nurse knows what's going on. And just one in the middle school.
Yeah, great for middle schoolers who don't want to check in with us as much, but who still need our guidance. And also on field trips, we don't have to be right next to a certain student because I will have an iPod and I'm tracking numbers and, you know, different parts, different buildings. It's fantastic. It's really going to change how we manage some of those illnesses.
Did you get an alert or something, like a
You
bing?
set parameters, yeah.
Okay.
So that the students are wearing continuous monitors, and so they get a trend, and usually it's connected to their parents' phone, so the parents are also getting it. But now we have them on our desks, so I would get to know when someone was trending low, so I don't have him walk in at a dangerously low blood glucose, because I see it coming. Maybe call, find out what's going on, suggest a snack, just to have a better, I mean, it's phenomenal information. It's really gonna help promote health.
So super quick, I mean, obviously the parent is looking at that as well. I mean, do they get some form of notice that maybe you administered a snack or, you know, something of that? I mean,
Yeah,
is
so
it
we
two-way?
have parameters and orders that give us windows so we know when to treat and how to react, but as well as having that information, my student, I probably text with his mom 4 to 6 times a day, sharing information.
Okay.
So that's happening anyway.
Okay.
This is just additional information, and just the information's there anyway. It's just a way that opens the door for us and takes some responsibility out for the parents and also reinforce the parents, because we're seeing what they're seeing, and we're 10 feet from the student versus them being
Right.
far away.
Sure. Okay.
So
Awesome.
are those, all those texts today, are those all captured in that parent communications number? So in addition to that,
I just count phone numbers for parent communication.
Just phone
phone
calls.
calls for parent
Phone calls,
communications.
I don't, we don't. No.
I'm not asking you to track it. What I'm
So the
looking
number's
for is
closer to
this number-
6,000.
Yeah, this number is much
That
higher
doesn't
than that.
represent,
Yeah,
I
that's
would
great. No,
say.
please don't.
Oh, no.
Don't be
No, I
invited
was
to
just
more
saying-
work.
Yeah, no, I think we're on the same page,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, they're not. That's additional.
There we go. So in addition to school safety, we also have basically oh, wait a minute, that's right, sorry. Not used to all this new. So the nurses are responsible for all the AEDs that are in the district. We have 15 of them right now. We're working with the fire department. All of our AEDs are old. We got them when we first got the Essential School Health Grant. So many are just about due to be replaced. And we're working with the fire department so that we can kind of standardize what's in the whole town, because the town hall needs one, the senior center needs one, the library's looking for one. AED, yes, that's a automatic external defibrillator, sorry. We have more AEDs than the fire department has. I thought that was interesting. There is the bill that is starting July 1st, 2018, and that is for all school-sponsored athletic events. There's a requirement now to have an AED, so I've worked with the athletic director. We'll probably be adding 5 AEDs so that all of the coaches in the fields that aren't connected to an open building will have meet that requirement. 911 calls this year in our schools is higher than we've ever had. The most we've had is 10. In the last 6 years that I've kept track of this, 4 of them were EpiPens, and it didn't discriminate. We had 1 at the ECC, 1 at the middle school, and 2 at the high school.
So that includes staff as well as
So that includes
students?
staff.
Okay.
There were 14 students this year and 2 staff.
Right.
And one of the calls, the next tab there, it's the CPR that we provide for staff and students. Kathleen's one of our instructors. Laura McDonald is an instructor. We provide CPR for 6th grade, 9th grade, all community programs, kindergarten teachers, and any other staff that is interested in taking CPR. But I was at one of the elementary schools last week, and one of the teachers came to me to tell me that they had an emergency this year, one of the staff and community programs, and she just wanted to tell me that she knew what to do. They all felt comfortable, thanks to the great teaching. Someone called 911, someone went to the door to meet the ambulance. They really felt like they knew what to do in an emergency, and she was very thankful. So I'm glad we offer that in our district.
If you administer an EpiPen, automatic go to the ER.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And on the next slide, I'll tell you because of how many food allergy students we
No,
have.
Jack has one.
I'm a frequent flyer.
We've never had to use it yet, so.
Lucky you.
One of the other new kind of emergency first responder training that all of the nurses did this year was Stop the Bleed. In light of all of the tragic events that happen in schools, there's a nationwide push for everyone to be trained in Stop the Bleed, which is how to use tourniquets. After the marathon bombing, one of the physicians from Mass General kind of was part of this charge as well, that some of the tourniquets that people put on just aren't effective. So through grants, we now have tourniquets, and if you want to see what a tourniquet looks like, these are the CAT tourniquets that are used in the armed forces, as well as our EMS, and most communities carry them now. And we have now one in all of our first aid kits. So, now we have to do the next slide. So as I mentioned, food allergies continue to rise, 361 students with food allergies. And, I mean, you can see the types of medical conditions that we have here. I highlighted some of the high ones, and the one I put in red, anxiety, because that was such a big jump this year from last year. And if you remember last year, Betsy Marshall presented because she noticed in 3rd and 4th grade, students were coming in with crazy anxiety that weren't typical that she would, well, you might talk to that, but then she worked with the guidance counselor and put together that stress reduction anxiety class for 4th grade. And I don't know, Dr. Chan, I'm not sure why. Is it because there's no social stigma anymore, and so more physicians are doing the diagnosis, but it's certainly something we have to continue to watch.
So the whole anxiety is somebody has been diagnosed
This is
with that?
diagnosed, yes.
Actually, some of it could be parent reported. It may not necessarily be medically diagnosed, which I think might explain a few of the numbers, because we're asking that question specifically now at the beginning of the year when we ask for any medical conditions your child might have. So a parent may say anxiety but yet not have an official diagnosis.
Okay.
Doesn't mean we don't see it too, though. I
Right.
mean, it's clear that the child
Sure.
has some issues, so whether
Is that the
it's
same with
diagnosed or
depression? Is that self-reported, or is that a diagnosis?
With depression,
Yeah.
depression,
It's a big jump,
it's
too.
usually a diagnosis. Most parents will not voluntarily say my child has depression, but a lot of parents will say my child has a lot of anxiety.
And I would just add, in regards to the student service department as a whole, these two factors in the growth there is increasing the responsibilities, the work, the types of services that are provided across the board, whether it's all of our guidance counselors, our special education department, our adjustment counselors, certainly our nurses, and even the type of work and knowledge base that our general ed teachers need to have as well. So, you know, the numbers are significant, but the impact overall is truly significant with regard to the work that's happening in the district.
Another function of the school nurse, another role that they play is, of course, with screenings, vision, hearing screening, as you can make sense that it's important. We screen in grades 1, 5, 7, and 10, and the number of vision and hearing referrals are listed there. Obviously, we try to screen early in the year, especially in the lower levels, to make sure that students have glasses and have this remedied for education. And then for SBIRT, that's the screening, brief intervention, or referral to treatment. So in 9th grade, we started this program in 2013, and I guess I want to thank administration that we get to be early adopters. We're really lucky in this district for that. I mean, this was back, I think Hutch said, sure, go right ahead. And I mean, people like Steve Nugent and the health teacher, what do you think? Of course, this would be great for kids. So we got to be a pilot school, and when you pilot schools, you get to have grants, and it benefits the students, so I'm glad that we see that value in our district and we were able to do it. Per the law, we also started in middle school this year. And Kathleen worked with the guidance counselors, and they, again, screened in all 3 trimesters, all of the 7th grade. So the thing about the SBIRT screening is it's a conversation. It's not a lecture. We're all trained in something called motivational interviewing. So we ask the 4 questions to the students. It's a one-on-one conversation. And if, you know, one of the questions, for example, is, in the last year, have you had more than sips of alcohol, and have you used drugs, and have you taken pills or smoked marijuana? And if they say no, then you reinforce that. You educate it, and then you anticipate any challenges that the student might have. Like, what if it does happen, and share some techniques. And if they answer yes, you also do, again, you don't lecture, but just some motivational interviewing. What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And are you interested in changing some of that? You know, especially if your grades are going down or if it doesn't make your parents happy. So I think having the conversation is a very positive thing, and I think, you know, it's great that we do it in the community. What else about SBIRT? Well, the education piece. What I think is important, I have to press the button, is that what the nurses do when they're doing the SBIRT screening is they show the students, it's an opportunity to educate teens about their brain development. I think a lot of our students don't know about their brains, they don't know about lungs, they don't know about their bodies, and so I think it's a good time that they can be educated in showing this MRI scan, highlighting areas involved in a memory test with a 15-year-old heavy drinker as opposed to a non-drinker. And I mean, they really respond.
Do you want to take your math test with that much of your brain working or that much of your brain working? And they're like, that happened? Like, yeah, that's why we're here. That's why we're talking to you. There's a picture. We have evidence, you know.
And I like the next slide as well. Again, it doesn't work to tell a teen to not do something or to stop, but if you can show some benefits of delaying, because in this slide it shows that 40% of kids who begin drinking at age 15 have the potential to become alcoholics, as opposed to only 7% if they wait till they're 21. So a developing brain is also more vulnerable to addiction, and if you can, you know, educate, delay, try to get this message across. So I know you've talked about vaping in this committee multiple times. So we did a youth risk behavior survey. Laura McDonald at the high school did this in January. Not on the slide is tobacco, just an interesting fact is about 7% of students reported that they tried tobacco, and 2% have used tobacco cigarettes in the last 30 days. So this is vaping products. About 35%, again, not on this slide, have tried it, but in the last 30 days, there's about 24% that have used it, and here's the amount that they've used. So I think just for social norms to remember that it's not all students, and I think we have to remember that not all students do it, especially when we do expert screening. It's good to tell the students that, you know, most of your peers don't do this, so, you know, it's okay not to do it, and here's reasons why. Now, 24% is still very, very high. It's ridiculous. And I mean, the way that the vaping products and the way that Juul has advertised to young teens is just terrible.
These are high school?
This is high school.
At first glance, I thought that because the blue and the light blue were so close, I looked at the guide and I thought that it was 20 to 29 days with 76% for a second. I was having a heart attack over it.
So I have some products to show.
Good.
This is a Juul, and if you tap it twice, the green light will come on because I've charged them. So they look exactly the same. This is also a Juul. It doesn't have a pod in it. The pods are attached to the top of them. And they come in various flavors. The most popular flavor is mango. There's mint. There's so there's so the Juul only makes 4 flavors, but the other flavors that they're talking about, there's actually 8,000 different flavors. So I went to a vape store so that I could educate myself. These are 2 other devices. They're called the Breeze.
What little vape store? Around here or in New Hampshire?
So North Andover doesn't sell these products, which is great. Our health department.
Where you went?
I went to Haverhill.
Okay. I know that I was at the mall just a few weeks ago, and it's a kiosk. You just walk
Yeah.
in, there's a kiosk, and it's all Juuls and vaping.
Smells like tobacco.
So,
Oh my God.
so these devices, so those are the vaping devices with the pod. So I have to just say too, though, that this pod is the same amount of nicotine as this pack of cigarettes.
Yikes.
It's really, really terrible. It's just awful. $11.17, $5. So they make it fun,
Smoky, not smoky.
right?
Right.
Fun, smells nice. I mean, that device is beautiful. Kids like it. There's YouTube videos, social media, that it's a great thing to do, and it's just terrible. We're back to the days like 15 years ago when we had to tell kids not to smoke, because that's certainly better than this.
You have to plug this in.
So you plug that into a charger.
It looks like a.
It goes right into you.
Looks like a thumb drive.
You can,
Which is why
you
we
can,
do it even in class.
you can charge it right on your computer. Here's my little charger. So you just plug it into the USB, and there's a magnet, and that sits right on top of it.
Pass that over. I don't see that.
So that plugs into your computer, or you can use your phone charger.
Cheryl, do you think these numbers are accurate? I think that the kids
So
are pretty
you
good
know
at
what?
reporting?
They match right up with the state.
Yeah. Because that honestly, those numbers, I'm just being, they don't scare. I mean, you have 87% of the people, the kids, have only used it once or twice in the last 30 days. I just think 20, 30 years ago, you would see a lot more kids smoking. I mean, I think we've done a good job over the last several years. Well, no.
So,
but-
and I think too, though, you also have all grades here, and it's higher in the higher grades than the lower
Yeah.
grades. No, I'm with you, social norms, you
Are
know,
changing,
let's-
I mean-
But,
But this is on the rise.
this is definitely on the rise.
I'd be curious to see a pie chart with how many kids smoke cigarettes. Do you have that too?
Yeah, so that I have, I didn't bring
Okay.
it, so
I'd be curious.
it's 7% have tried cigarettes.
In the
and
last
only
30 days?
2% in the last 30 days.
That's good.
Yeah, that's great. So we did such a good job with.
We'll do a good job with this too.
But again, advancing technology, I mean, I have a student that graduated in 2015, and I have a student that will graduate with any luck tomorrow night.
I think he's safe.
That's good.
Thought I'd let you know.
What it looked like, what vaping looked like in 2015 was so much more cumbersome. You know, these
Right.
kids were carrying like these kind of big devices, and the
So
puff of smoke was as big as
It
this
originally
room.
was for people to try to quit smoking, but now they really.
But kids were doing it then.
Not
and it's
so
just
many. Now it's a little bit, yeah. So the other devices, these devices don't have pods. You fill it with liquid, and it can be liquid flavoring, liquid THC from marijuana, or any flavor you want. This is 8,000 flavors like that. So that's one type. The same company, Breeze, and that's the type of thing that you fill it with.
And kids call it juice.
That's the juice, right?
So if you have high schoolers talking about juice, you might want to have a conversation with your high schooler.
So it's highly concentrated liquid nicotine or liquid THC, and there's also carcinogens because of how it's, the battery kind of heats it up, and I don't have a list of all of them, but propylene glycol and...
Is that at this point legal to get?
You buy it online. I was able to do that.
You didn't at the vape store?
At the vape store, I didn't ask her for that.
Okay.
You can't sell THC.
I think that's July 1st. Okay.
Oh, really?
I think that's coming, like, that you can go to the store. And
Just like, all right.
The other
This looks like a hotspot connection.
It
Yeah.
does.
I mean,
Yeah, it does.
It does.
I mean, if my kids had this at home, I'd think that they were like plugging in remotely.
I can't open it.
Parents
Just
don't
trying to-
know.
They
Parents
will
will see this in their bedroom and have no idea.
And the kids think it's healthy. They think it's healthy because that's how the companies are marketing it. That it's good for your lungs, but
So there's no regulations?
there are no regulations yet, and that's the deal. So the FDA, so now the American Lung Association, and American Heart Association are suing the FDA because there's no regulations. But they are starting regulations. The first regulation they're starting is just that they can't package the juice in food-type boxes. For example, we saw samples yesterday. It looks exactly like a juice box. And so the FDA is exactly the same, or a Smucker's jelly and the popcorn box. So they aren't going to be able to do that anymore, but that's about all they've done so far, which is unfortunate. I mean, so education's key. I mean, teens don't like to be lied to. And I remember, Miss Mabley, your 5th grader was in the tobacco life skills class. And so I think that to teach them that these companies are advertising, they're telling you that it's safe and healthy, but it's not. I mean, there's nicotine, high levels of nicotine. And we're going to have the first generation now that's going to be addicted again, which is just terrible. And there's the carcinogens, which there's something called popcorn lung. I don't know the clinical name, but kids are starting to hear that. So I've talked to some students, and at least they know that now, that it is bad because of the popcorn lung, and that's bad for your lungs. So, any questions about vaping? Kathleen and I both heard someone yesterday speak, all the middle school teachers, and Diane Knight from the Tobacco Control, and the health department had a gentleman come speak to them as well, and the high school teachers. So we have a lot of information for parents on the website. I brought all the information too if you guys want copies of that, but we'll get them all on the website.
Well, I know that Dr. Gilligan and I, during a PTO president's meeting, were talking last month and about all this stuff and looking at possibly doing a little road show to various PTO meetings next year so that parents can see all the stuff you just, like, I'd never seen any of this before, other than in the literature, so.
And Dawn and I talked, the woman that spoke yesterday, Diane Knight, she's agreed to do, what do we call it, like a video with our cam.
Excellent. We talked about that too. That would be great.
We were interested in possibly, the police have done some great work with some of our schools, not all of them though, and at National Night Out called In Plain Sight.
Right.
Where they set up a bedroom and they hide typically more drug paraphernalia, but I think this would be an easy addition to some of these components.
So taking those things on the road a little bit, because a lot of it is parents just have no idea.
Yeah, so I purchased all this with the grant, so we can use it for education, and some of it was confiscated. So I did get some of it from some principals.
Nice.
So what I bought at the vape store was exactly what we confiscate. So that was the woman that sold things to me. She said, this is what high schoolers use. I'm like, well, why do you know what high schoolers use?
Right, and why are they, right.
So I'm not going to get any.
Well, just very quickly, I mean, years ago, like, they literally would, emit huge plumes of smoke, I mean, these are smokeless, basically, too, which I think, we've heard, and I think, it's all been on social media, that, people can do it in a classroom, or they can do it, walking down the street, and nobody kind of notices that it's happening and it's out there. And I think that's where, I don't know what to do in terms of, detection of that, but that's where I think it just becomes so
So my
risky.
focus would be on prevention.
Right.
The principals can work on detection, but prevention, because they need to understand and be educated that this is not good for their bodies.
No, of course, but.
And
For the regular users, they're probably using it in all hours of the day.
Yeah.
I've
There's a
even
handful.
received phone calls from another district because parents are requesting that their students be able to, because they're so addicted, it's the only way that keeps them calmed down. And we don't have, I have not had that call in our district, but, so it's, some students are really addicted now.
Wow.
Oh, there was one other statistics that I read, so an adult would crave a cigarette after an hour, whereas because of the developing brains of our youth, after 20 minutes, they crave again. And so every 20 minutes, they want a few puffs. So you get 200 puffs off of one pod. So they buy one device. This is about $40, and they share it. And the pods are only $5, and so they share the devices. They can have their own pods, but they pass them around a lot at parties. I have 3 college children, so I've asked them all kinds of questions about what goes on and happens in college as well. So, mostly parties.
I remember a couple of years ago, you'd be driving down the highway and you'd see a plume of that white smoke come
Right.
out. And until last year, I learned about how it's completely smokeless.
Smokeless. Yeah, that's what I think, it
And
can
it smells
actually happen.
pleasant.
Right.
The-
It can happen
the
anywhere and you don't
mango
even notice it.
flavor, you can smell all of them. I can pass them around.
Yeah, I know, I wanted to wash my hands.
All right.
Very good.
There's one that's a tobacco flavor that does not sell well, and the kids don't like it. But for communities that aren't allowed to sell flavored products, they can sell the tobacco one. So that's why they keep that, because that gets them around the communities that don't allow the flavoring. It's too bad. All right, where's my clicker? Any other questions on vaping?
It does count as a chemical health violation, correct?
Yes.
So for sports, I just think that's a really important point to emphasize.
All right, education. That's what we have to do, make sure we educate the students about all of this. And just, I think, even Betsy told me this, I read that every moment we spend educating children about their bodies and the effects of toxins on their bodies is time invested in preventing future drug use. So this is work we have to do. Yesterday, so in red, let's see, there are some programs for elementary to teach them about their brains and about their lungs. And you don't really talk about drugs, but you just talk about what toxins can do to your body. And so those are some programs that we're going to look at for next year.
So that life skills one is the one that I mentioned that my daughter did this. Was that a pilot just at
So
my school?
it was
Thompson?
pilot
I
at
thought it was
Thompson
amazing.
and at Kittredge. And the same feedback, 5th graders at Kittredge did ask about vaping. So 5th graders are asking about it. So there were questions. And
But
it's
did
good
people
that-
find it, was the feedback
Same
good?
as Thompson, was
Okay.
very good feedback.
I, as a parent, thought it was great.
Right. So we will implement that in all of the
That's
5th
great.
grades next year, maybe down to 4th. It can go to 3rd, that program. And in the middle school, it was implemented 6, 7, and 8. So that was the opioid prevention grant. And the health teacher, Jen Lundy, really got on board with that, and she worked like really well on that program and got that implemented. She didn't have any other curriculum, so she used that. And she was at the training yesterday, and they talked about something called Catch My Breath. And so she's going to look at that for next year. What are some other new things? Grades, health and hygiene. Kathleen, what grade was that?
We did that in the
Life skills
class.
for special education. And of course, I mentioned CPR. We already do that with coaches and teachers. Education's a huge part of the nurse's job. In elementary, there are no health teachers. So it's important that we get in there, and I know Betsy and I have had conversations about this a lot, that anxiety class that she started last year. The puberty class, now we add a social emotional piece to it in addition to the physical changes, because that's a big part of 5th grade.
I thought that was good too.
Yeah, so
Good change.
The focus of our teaching, our priorities has shifted so much in the past several years. I mean, it used to be we would focus on the BMI numbers and recognize that we had obesity, so we would think of how we can address that with, nutrition programs. But it seems like the past few years, it's really been this social emotional piece. And it's scary because I think most health and safety issues do start with education, and that's become paramount. But it's a little bit hard in elementary because we are the only health teacher. There is no health teacher. There is health curriculum, but I feel like as a nurse, we're just barely touching on so many important things, and wish we had, more time and resources to really do what needs to be done. So maybe in the future.
Yeah, we have work to do.
Yeah.
Collaborations. We have our Health Advisory Committee, with Ms. Picard is on that committee with us. We review and help implement school district policies related to nutrition, PE, and basically anything that affects student health. It's a nice group across the whole community that's involved, food services, the health department, and some of the programs too aren't just, substance use programs. Some of the health programs this year, that K-3 track program that started with the youth center and the health department was involved with, the 4-to-8 track program. I mean, that's great activity for our youth, good role models with the peer leaders that work with them on those projects. The DESE Wellness Coalition, we were invited to be on that, and that coalition is going to strengthen school wellness standards. And what else? The grants that we have, the Essential School Health Grant that we've had for the last 15 years that bought so much of our equipment and projects and pays for some direct care as well as professional development for nurses. This is our last year, and there is a Senate budget amendment right now that they're trying to cut it, so we're trying to fight to get all of our money back for this last year. But the RFI just came out this morning, so there will be a new grant. It's going to be called the Comprehensive School Health Service Grant, which we'll apply for. The RFR will be in October for that. And I mentioned the Youth Opioid Prevention Grant, and then the Innovative Care Coordination Grant. That was Barbara Hedstrom and Laura McDonald that did the reentry process. And what's great about being, again, letting us be early adopters and the support with administration, I go to a meeting once a month, but I think it's well worth it. We get to share with lead nurses throughout the state, so there's about 80 towns in the grant. So our two nurses did the Innovation Care Coordination. They presented. Natick did something on Q cards, which is LGBTQ cards. Another town did something on diabetes. And so we all get to share that and bring them back to our own districts. So we're really lucky to be part of this Essential School Health Grant. Professional development, the nurses with the grant are able to attend professional development. There was a lot of time spent. I know Betsy and Barbara Ann Donovan went to the New England conference, which was a full weekend with all of the latest technology, latest programming that's going on. Kathleen went to the Jocelyn on a Saturday to learn all the new technology with diabetes. And there was a racial equity conference. There's school safety conferences. There's been so many. So I just, the nurses are doing a good job keeping up with everything that's happening. I have to talk about Helen. She got her DESE licensure this morning. Yay! And Kathleen Pease is a nationally certified school nurse. She took the exam and passed that.
What about you?
I just
makes us look good.
So again, I have to click the slide. So thank administration again so that we can be early adopters, help with receiving grants, ultimately helping our students. And the North Andover community is lucky to have such dedicated, caring staff for their students.
If everybody wouldn't mind, I think Joanna O'Connell in the back there. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I think it's awesome what you just presented. I was just thinking about like the drug education. I know you said it's hard to start on early levels like K1 and 2. You don't want to scare them off. But maybe thinking about like choices and like the right choices and like, there's books on choices and like, seeing a friend's parent's medication, knowing that you don't touch that. Like things like that. Right. You could maybe get into it, like the
That's that's part of the life skills curriculum that was piloted this year. But I think from what I've learned at some of these conferences about drug prevention is you have to teach children about their bodies first and foremost. And I think that's the piece that in the early years that we as nurses can really start to look at, you know, talk to them about their brain and how it works, and then, you know, get into things like what is pain and, you know, what can you do besides take medication to feel better. And then, you know, in later years, they'll go more into actual opioids and specific drugs, but that preliminary education about how their body works is so important. And I think that's what I'd like to take a look at for next year, starting with that.
I think it's worth mentioning two subjects that maybe you didn't think of as related, but they can be very related. One is the fact that you brought up depression and anxiety, and now this vaping and substance use. The two can come together rather catastrophically for a lot and with the rise of these kinds of things, there's a lot of potential for some more difficulties for these kids, so it's good to be on top of it.
I forgot to mention Dr. Chan is our school physician, as you all have met.
Yes.
Has been the school physician for 10 years, 12 years? I don't know. 16 years before I came.
Yeah.
Your kids were little.
Yeah.
Also sits on the Health Advisory Committee, comes to the nurses during some of our professional development days, kind of lets us know what's going on. Always a reference.
Yeah, my door is always open. The nurses, when they have challenging cases, they come find me, and it's nice because I have patients that also in private practice that go to the schools, and they feel very comfortable with the nursing also enough to talk with. A lot of times we're not talking with the nurses because we're not allowed to by
Right.
you know, we're not given the permission by parents, but there's some who feel very comfortable with the nurses here. A lot of them do. So we've had some great, you know, conversations, and it's good education for everyone. It's better
excellent.
care for everyone. So it's great.
Any other questions?
It's fantastic. Thank you all for all your hard work. It's really invaluable.
Yeah, I'm just going to say one thing. I mean, as I've now had my kids kind of, you know, go through Kittredge and the middle school and approaching the high school and met parents who have kids at all different levels in all different schools. Anybody that I know that has any form of a medical issue or a concern, the first thing that they always say is just how amazing the nursing staff is, and how supportive they are of, you know, whatever's going on in their child's life. And it's really hard, I think, when, you know, you have something like that that's going on and you let your child go to school, and to know how comfortable they are and how capable the nurses are, I think is just, I think it really speaks volumes to the staff that you have, and thank you for that.
Great job.
Absolutely.
Just because Mrs. Hedstrom's
So the other nurses that couldn't be here, because usually everyone comes, but they all had, it's a crazy time. Graduation,
Yeah.
birthday, ballet, and this, that, and the other thing. But they also thank the administration for support.
Before they leave it.
Thank you.
So one other health-related thing before y'all leave, it's mostly, is that we have Dr. Chan, to whether or not it's the first reading on requesting that we appoint Dr. Chan again. I guess we do this annually to, yes, serve as our school physician. So this is the first reading. And we will vote that next time. I don't know if there's any questions in particular, other than thanks. Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your patience this evening also. A lot of fun and exciting stuff going on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Dr. Price was just telling me, but one of the things, annual review of the wellness policy.
You're recommending no changes, correct?
That's right. So that's here, recommending no changes. We will vote on that next time. Thank you. Okay. So we're going to go back up, right? I understand, to Yes. Yes. Let's do that. Yes. So why don't we jump and do the 10D, which is the sustainability grant presentation. Would you get one for me too, please? Joanna O'Connell. So we're looking at 10D, which is the School Waste Reduction Initiative.
So we don't need, this is actually driven through DPW. They've done a lot of the prerequisite work that had to be done in order to be eligible to apply for this grant. And so we're not looking, it doesn't require school committee approval, but it does require a signature from the chair. So we're looking for support tonight for the school district to participate in the grant application. With me is Joanna O'Connell, a member of the town sustainability committee, and the one who's really been driving this initiative and trying to get the application submitted. So in the interest of time, I'll go through this quickly. If you need me to slow down, let me know. But why are we doing this? The North Andover students have done a good job, but they're always asking us to do more with regards to recycling and other opportunities. And the cafeteria waste seems like the next best step to take. Joanna ran some pilot programs over the winter that showed that we have some good opportunities for reducing our waste from our cafeterias, and we want to really continue that. And there's examples. What's the name of the DEP rep?
Carolyn Dan.
That met with us a few times and has worked with Andover and other communities and has had a lot of success. So they're the ones we would be doing this through. So basically we do recycling, but what this program would do is make sure that we have the things in place to allow that to continue and to continue well, so that we have the bins, the containers for recycling in the proper areas, that cardboard recycling is easy to do for the custodians, and cans and bottles and cardboard for the kitchen and faculty are readily available. And then what about the cafeteria? That's the next step, and the one we're really focused on is that we are able to reduce waste. There are pour-off stations. We would make sure those are there in all of the schools when the program is done. The carton and bottle recycling containers, you'll see pictures of the different containers that would be in place. And then food waste collection bins, so that material that can be composted is separated in one place and can be taken care of and processed. And then stacking of the trays that we have, and you might ask why. Well, they take up a lot of space, so you actually can save a lot of liners by properly stacking those and then disposing of them, instead of just tossing them away and having them willy-nilly in the liners. And then to continue and expand as much as possible the food rescue program that we already have in some of our schools. So how can it happen? The DPW, as I said, is the driver. Will submit a grant application to DEP. It's due June 13th, correct? So we do need support tonight to submit the grant for $30,000. Ironically, they've done all the work, the front end work, but the $30,000 would actually be geared towards what we're going to be doing in the schools. And it will allow us to get the equipment that we talked about, fund a coordinator who will work with each school. The only way this really works is if you've got somebody working with each school. Obviously, the principal needs to be involved, the custodians, all the staff need to be involved, but somebody has to be driving it to really make it happen. And when I say everybody, the students as well, as you'll see. And so they coordinate with the principals, they create the green teams, which include the students, they procure the equipment, they plan the kickoff, they help plan and coordinate the oversight, and they're linked to the town and the schools.
And that's one person for the whole
Correct,
district.
correct, yep. And the timeline is we apply for the grant, or DPW does, notice would come in November, planning meetings would occur, we're planning to phase this in. So the first 3 schools, as you can see, would be Thompson, the middle school in Kittredge. Thompson and the middle school were the ones that we ran the pilots in, and Kittredge would be the third one we would add to roll out in 2019. It would be March of 2019 that we'd be rolling it out. So the last quarter kind of that year. And then to start the next school year, we would add Franklin, the high school and kindergarten. And then we thought in that second wave to include kindergarten to get the students introduced to it as early as possible. And then the last stage, March of 2020, would be the Atkinson and Sargent.
Just for 1 second, so
Yep.
the three initial ones, obviously the two pilot schools, the kitchen staff, the custodians, the principals, everybody was in agreement, or were they reluctant, or?
Yeah,
is it
we've
gonna
got
be
a
forced on
slide
them?
about what
Okay.
concerns there are with the program. There's always trepidation.
Sure.
And we've been addressing that, and we think that what we have in place will alleviate those concerns once they're up and running.
Because that involves also the noon attendants are another huge important factor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
So-
And the key is the coordinator. Now, in talking to the DEP rep, it's often the person that's, the one who initiates. So it could be Joanna. But the key is the relationship that person has with the principals to plan it and spend a lot of time making sure that everyone's on board, everyone's had some input of what will work and what won't work, and then getting as many people in the school involved.
Right.
Do you want to add something? It looked like.
No, I was
Okay.
just.
I bet the kids are probably the easiest, is everybody
Yeah,
else
the
that you
kids
have.
caught on very quick, and, yeah, I think the principal at Thompson was, everybody had little concerns because change is difficult, but I think, they thought it was great and a good learning tool too for the kids overall.
It's a good intro into something I was going to point out during one of the slides.
Sorry.
Is that, no, it's okay. I went to, not this past year, but the year before, I went to Nietzsche's classroom, and one of the big emphasis is trying to reduce to 0%.
Your carbon footprint.
Right, exactly. Well, in waste.
Mhm.
And the middle school students really take to it, and it would be great to be able to build on that. So yeah, they're really getting excited about it.
When you say the kindergarten, do you mean starting just with kindergarten, or do you mean like the preschoolers as well?
The kindergarten building.
The actual Ann Bradstreet Early Childhood Center.
Thank
Yep. We'll get there. Yep. So why do we think it will work? Because of the pilots we did have quite a bit of reduction in the cafeteria waste that we were able to divert. So given the success in the pilots, we definitely think it'll work. And here's what they look like. This was Thompson, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, they have the different containers that when they're coming up, they throw things in, whether it be recyclable material. There would be a place for food waste as well. I mean, for food rescue, but the food waste goes in one place, and the recycled materials and so on, in liquids as well. And then this was the middle school, right?
No, that was the other side of Thompson.
Other
So we
side
had
of
two
Thompson.
setups at Thompson. Yeah, 'cause that's what the principal thought would be the best, and it did work well, because they do like 110, 120 students a lunch, so they needed two setups.
Mm-hmm.
So your recycling there shows like juice boxes and milk containers can be recycled. Can those be recycled in our curbside, or is that different from what we can recycle at home?
Yes, they can, but things are kind of changing rapidly because China has stopped taking our recycling
Yeah.
and things, so things are very up in the air in the recycling world, but for this kind of program, DEP said yes. So that's what we went with. Could that change by the time we get the grant? It could. I don't really know, because things are so up in the air with recycling right now. But yes, cartons, juice boxes, and bottles. And the cartons were, in the elementary school level. We had a lot of cartons and a lot of kids not drinking their milk, and not because they didn't want to, they didn't want to throw it away. It was just they just weren't. A lot of kids don't drink all their milk. I found out. So, a lot of them.
And as you can see, it's not like we're talking high-tech equipment here, so
Yeah.
making adjustments
Yeah, that was very
won't be difficult.
makeshift.
And these are the results. You can see the pie charts, and that we were able to divert quite a bit. In the case of the 6th grade, 80% diversion, and then at Thompson, almost 90%. And this was actually a side-by-side showing the Andover High Plain Elementary after they did their audit, showing how much they had reduced. And then the setup that they had there, again, it's easy to do, and it doesn't take long for the kids to learn exactly what they need to do. Yep, and then develop the habit, exactly. So, and as we've alluded to, it can be tailored to the school, depending on what the principal thinks is going to work. And just some examples, Mr. B's buddies, they rotate among every classroom, some responsibility. The green team, 5th grade, help at lunch, helping to direct, to make sure things are going in the right place. Badges to volunteers to allow them to be the first in line for lunch as a reward. Ask lunchtime aides to help students prepare their trays for quick separation. That's a big one, and that's kind of what I saw at Nature's Classroom. It's just that constant reminder at the table as you're getting ready to go up of what goes where, and you know, the importance of making sure that you're putting it in the right place. And then having the custodians in a lot of places have come up with ingenious ways to process the things more quickly and more efficiently.
Make their life easier too.
Yeah, well, that's the
Calibrate it to
what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention. Yeah, exactly. And it's good education, and this is where I would have talked about Nature's Classroom. It's a great opportunity that can be incorporated into the curriculum, that can make that connection in Nature's Classroom as they come away from that and continue it, and then letting our students lead with the example of what they feel is the right thing for the environment, for the community. And this is what Joanna was talking about. We've given them the opportunity to provide input. There's a video we're not going to show, but you can certainly access it. And then they've written letters and given their position, and you can see that of 70 letters, 2 were not in support of it and 68 were. So now the cost of the program, and based on the grant, if we do get it, it's $30,000 that would go towards equipment, biodegradable bags, and the coordinator for the next 3 years. Additional costs, the compost has to be processed, and that's outside of our normal trash pickup. So that's an additional cost. And then the biodegradable trays right now cost too much for us to consider, but they're coming down, and if they come down enough, then we could start thinking about the possibility of using biodegradable trays instead of the styrofoam trays we use, and that would save in that as well.
Jim, out of curiosity, are the 2 letters that aren't supported, are they in this packet?
Yes, they're in there. I don't know where they are.
wanna
They're in
find
there.
those
I didn't
two.
take them. I wouldn't be.
That's right.
Everybody has to.
What was their major complaint?
That it took too long.
Lost
Yeah, I
recess
think they were
time.
both that it took too long.
Lost recess time.
Yeah, but it, I mean, I think, you know, they were, to that point, they were first starting it. It was their first 3 days of doing it, but I think, you know, months, weeks down the road.
It would get faster over
Yeah,
time.
I don't think they would even be thinking about it, so, you know, but.
So the anticipated costs of doing this program are basically, the grant covers all the other things, but it does not cover the cost to process the compost. And so the anticipated cost, because we're doing it in March for the first year for the 3 schools, would be $4,000. And then adding the other 3 schools, we'd be up to 6 schools, would be $14,500 in year 2. And then up and running fully would cost us about $18,000 a year. Now there is going to be diversion from the trash, and it's possible that if it proves to be accurate, about $7,400 less in tipping fees could be saved each year. And if that's the case, then we can have discussions about offsetting the cost of composting. And there's also the potential for North Andover to earn $10,400 every year by keeping up with environmental milestones that we have attained this year and now will need to maintain, and that's going to be the responsibility or oversight of Sustainability Committee. So that would offset the cost as well and almost make it a wash if we're getting that grant and we are seeing the savings that are anticipated. This money will go into a separate fund and can roll into the following year, so you can carry it over. And can be directly used to, we've checked that it can be directly used to offset the compost collection costs. And just as a spreadsheet, you can see the total cost over 3 years will be about $5,300, and the possible tipping fees in year 3 would be about $7,400. So again, it could be a wash, and if it's not, if it's proving that it's costing us more than we anticipated, then we can just stop doing it, and if it's working, we can continue. So we do need to have a recycling policy, which will be coming. We need a letter of support signed by superintendent, school committee chair, principals, fire chief, board of health, and facilities manager. We just need now the school end of things. We have the town, the fire chief, board of health, and the facilities manager. And then we're going to be working with the custodians, facilities, and kitchen. And we need to apply by June 13th. And then if once that goes on, yeah, we'll agree to contract with compost hauler once we're ready. So there are some concerns, as we mentioned. One is where will the compost be stored. We've been working with the custodians on that, and that we'll have to work with whoever the compost contractor is as well, to figure out how they are going to pick that up. Could be extra work for the custodial staff, especially in the beginning, yes. But again, it's one of those things that once the routine is going, then it's not really anything that we anticipate being very burdensome at all. Could require extra monitoring by the cafeteria staff as well, but again, same thing. The kids are the ones who are really doing the work because they're the ones putting them in the right places. Additional cost to continue if grant ends, so that would mean we would have to reevaluate if the grant does end, if it's working or not, and if it's worth whatever the cost might be at that point. Who will be the coordinator? As I said, it often is the person who initiates the program, but that would have to be decided once we find out if we're getting it. And will it impact the food rescue program? Actually, no. It's going to increase awareness, so we would anticipate it actually helping the food rescue program. And then what if it isn't working? We'll just, at that point, we'll continue to monitor, but we can get out at any time. That's it.
It says here, we don't want to live on a trash planet, do we?
We don't.
We do not.
Certainly don't. This is excellent.
Yes, it's very exciting. Very responsible, right?
Once again, looking over ahead of the curve. Yeah, it's really exciting. Just put this in the strategic plan, Dr. Gilligan.
Yes.
Yep, so if we can just get support for the chair to sign, then we'll put the application in.
So we,
What support do you need from us?
do we need to vote, or can we just have an agreement
Yeah.
whether or not that we support that I sign this effort toward a grant?
That's up to you guys.
I move that you sign away.
I'll second that. Sign.
All right, all in favor of me signing for this excellent grant?
Aye.
Aye. Hooray, thank you.
I'll sign too.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it right here.
Excellent, thank
I'm
you,
doing old
Joanna.
school, like
Yes.
this.
Ms. O'Connell.
June 13th. Just happened to have.
I know, I have it all written, so I just need to get in the system and.
Are you okay with me signing, Dr. Gilligan?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Dr. Price.
Yes, so the school committee chair is there, and then there's actually, on the back, there's a space for additional, so I would love.
Yeah, I thought it said super.
Oh, does it say super?
It does say superintendent
Okay,
at the top.
super, perfect, yes, okay.
And facilities manager.
The super.
And if it doesn't work, you can blame her.
That's right.
That's right.
Add it to the list.
I'll add it to the list.
Oh my gosh.
This is exciting, thank you. And I love this writing assignment too, it was good.
That was Mrs. Gordon.
Of course it
helped with
was,
that.
yeah.
She is, I have, middle school teachers were like super receptive. They were in the cafeteria with me with gloves on, like they were
awesome, and Bate in the library, and Erin especially leading.
Fantastic.
I think it's
Thank
great
you.
for the
Thank you.
student leadership, yeah. Thank you. I'm like,
great.
the what?
The pour-off.
That's so much
Because everywhere you
fun.
go, there's recycling, but people always throwing full things.
It's
Exactly.
absolutely nasty.
That makes the trash really heavy for those guys too. You know,
Yes,
they
it
do.
does, and it leaks all the way down the hallway.
You taking that now?
Yeah.
Great.
I think this is you.
No, take these letters.
Those
Oh, this way, okay. Pass those along, yeah.
A lot of them are similar, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just curious if that's something.
As a contrary.
Probably
you.
arguing against.
Excellent, thank you very much. I think this is exciting.
Thank you. So excited that you were all, is this not done?
No,
There they
no.
are. Okay, I want these. These are awesome.
There's some over there.
Okay.
Yep, sorry.
No, it's
He's
okay.
not in there.
I know, I double checked.
Did anyone find the?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, sorry.
Did you say it took too much time?
They were back to back, yeah.
Is that it?
I think that was what the some concerns slide.
Yes, that's great.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to go back up to old business. Is that right? You already did the summer professional development update and all those things above. Okay, sorry. Apologize. Okay, 9B. No, good. Second reading for the revolving account budget adjustments.
Yeah, and
Anything different?
indicated that we might be adding, well, we did the athletic, an increase of $12,000, and again, it's based on mostly the participation in track that has been happening, has increased the revenue coming in for the account. We're not sure if we're going to see an increase in, by the end of the year, the expenses, but all it would mean if we didn't need to use it would roll over to start the new year, because that's what revolving accounts do. They just carry on from one year to the next. So, yeah, just looking for approval to increase these three now revolving accounts as presented for FY18.
So I will recommend that we approve an increase of $142,750 to the fiscal year community programs revolving account budget, $65,000 to the food services revolving account budget, and $12,000 to the athletics revolving account budget in the budget lines as listed.
Second.
All right, so motion by Mr. McDevitt, second by Mr. Trissy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent, thank you. And then we have the second reading on policy JLCD, about administering medications to students, and JLCD-E, medication consent form. If you remember, this is where we took the excellent forms that Cheryl Barzak already was using and added them to our policies that were, was a one-sentence statement, which was pretty thin, so it's just tidying up some housekeeping, really.
I'll make a motion to approve policy JLCD, administering medicines to students as it's presented in the packet.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Trissy, second by Mr. McDevitt. In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you. And then we have one more. The -E. Or does that cover it by
That's all.
saying it
That's the
once?
same thing. That's the same thing.
Okay.
That's it.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's the
Okay, great,
consent form.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right, and then now we're at the superintendent. Entry plan. Is there enough room in this room for two superintendents?
Absolutely. I was actually going to email all of you with this and take some feedback individually, but I thought I could just take a few minutes tonight to talk to you all. I'm beyond excited to get out into the community and hear from folks through a new lens and a new set of eyes as superintendent. And as part of it, right side. Thank you, Mr. Mealy.
Screwing up, all right?
Yeah, there you go. As part of it, I'd like to send out a note to everyone in the community, as well as get an online survey up and running. And it's really going to be based on 7 questions, and the survey will be as well. And the questions are really based on what's going well here in North Andover, and what do we want to do to preserve things that are going well, areas that we can improve, questions around communication and decision-making, meeting the needs of all students, if people had ideas for new programmings, whether it's activities or curriculum, and advice that I may need as a new superintendent. I think one of the cool parts that I'm planning on doing is in terms of the different community groups, whether it be community, staff, or municipal. I'm really trying to expand beyond what typical superintendents do in terms of reaching out to some of the agencies that we work with in the greater Lawrence area in the Merrimack Valley, places like the Greater Lawrence Action Council, the different groups that work with our nurses on the opiate grants. And I want to make a strong effort to also hear from folks that we never hear from in schools. So, for example, we've done a lot of outreach at places like Woodridge and Royal Crest, but I'd like to get down to the Veterans Federal Housing Projects and some of these other places where we'll do pizza nights, and I'll be able to hopefully engage with people that normally don't come to events or have their voices heard. Down, bring it to them because they don't always typically show up. They might not show up at, the PTO and those types of things. So in addition to the PTOs and all the staff meetings and the municipal meetings and all the different groups throughout the town, from the Fields Committee to Rick Gorman, I'd really like to make an effort to connect with some folks that we haven't connected with before. That being said, I'm also making an effort not only with places like Phillips and Brooks, but I did an entry meeting last week with Merrimack College and the Dean of the School of Education, and I also want to continue with additions on there of Salem State, UMass Lowell. We are in Northern Essex is something that I'm in the process of scheduling, as well as Endicott College. So I'm pretty excited, and I'm most excited to hear from folks. Really, although I've been here a long time, through a new lens, a new set of eyes, like I've never been to North Andover, because we have a tremendous strategic plan, and I think that we have some tremendous momentum going with that. On the 21st of June, Dr. Price and I will present the strategic plan for next year. It's kind of a nice send-off of, the work that we're doing collaboratively and as a team. But this information is, whether it's the survey or the folks that can attend the events, is going to provide rich data and important key points to add to that strategic plan as we continue to go forward. Particularly, I'd like to present this in December because I'd like to have that information right before budget season. I didn't want to take a ton of time tonight, but I wanted to be able to share with you guys, and if you have any feedback, I'd be...
Do you want us to just email you?
You could email me or Bev, either one. So.
I think it's great you reaching out to a lot of these different groups. The community meetings can be very helpful. I was talking to, like I said earlier, one of the other school building committee members last night as we were looking at the kindergarten and looking towards the middle school and saying, that's our next one. And when we do that, obviously we're going to need town-wide support on it. So if with you, personally reaching out to these folks, and when the time comes and we need their help to do it, it's good that I have a relationship with you at that point. So I'm really excited about that.
And I'd have to say, I just recently met with the senior center folks, and that's my favorite day of the year. It's usually an hour meeting, and it went on for 2.5. And once I tell them we still do the Pledge of Allegiance and still teach cursive, we get into the other stuff. But great folks, and it's to be able to work collaboratively, particularly with the town side. And the seniors were pretty excited that the school was supportive of, particularly of their project coming up. This was right before a town meeting that I met with them. They were very supportive of the schools. Actually, the most supportive I've seen them in years in terms of going down there on a yearly basis with Irene as a guest. I really feel like this community has come together in ways that I've never seen it come together before, and I think that we have a really bright future. So,
I couldn't agree with you more.
Did you talk for the 2.5 hours?
No, Mr. Callahan was a very, there was a few folks down there very active.
Okay.
And I actually brought Nikki Murphy with me.
Were you a part of like the Monday presentation slot? Yeah.
Yeah, and I brought Nikki Murphy to talk about social emotional learning.
News and views, yep.
And what was great was the grandparents in that room, and some great grandparents, recognizing how schools are very different today in some ways, and the challenges that kids face. Some ways their lives are a lot easier than, what they talk about. But I was really impressed in the sense of they had concerns about social emotional well-being, anxiety, and more importantly, they were optimistic about, like, we have good kids in North Andover who are doing remarkable things, and it was a sense of, like, we'll be in good shape for our future if we continue to produce the kids that we have. And, so it's not the typical people saying kids are disrespectful these
Kids
days.
today,
Kids
right.
today. And I think a lot of that is the work that the school committee, the selectmen, the town manager, the superintendent, people working all together across town, youth services, it makes a big difference. So.
Absolutely.
In that you've been around for a lot longer than a lot of us have been around town. And so it might feel presumptuous for us to come to you and say, hey, do you know this about North Andover, or I have this thought. So you opening in this way really allows people to see you in a new light and to be able to bring forward their ideas. So I appreciate you putting this together.
I will say there's a lot of new folks to town that we sometimes take for granted that have no institutional knowledge or no memory of even 3 or 4 years ago, and I think it's important to hear from them as well.
I also think a number of these questions, Bev is fantastic and coded responses, and
Yeah.
you'll be able to see some trends over time. One of these questions even goes back to when Hutch asked, so you'll be able to look over time, which I think will be really important for the district. I think that's really smart of you, Greg, is to think about some continuity so we can look at what's changed and what hasn't.
So I want to thank you because I used most questions from yours, and some of yours were from Hutch's, and I think that's important because it gives us a benchmark to kind of look back.
Over years.
So I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
Bev did a tremendous job with your.
She's amazing.
And the coding. So now that I don't have a dissertation to code anymore, this is pretty exciting. But I'm just thrilled to get out and see people. So.
Thank you. So the last item that we have on new business is the first reading of, I received a proposal, as did Mr. Jackson, Dr. Price, et cetera, through our policy process, to name the North Andover High School wrestling room in honor of Bill Corey. I wanted to ask how to say Bill Corey. And if you see the letter here, which was written by one of his former wrestling teammates, and you can see the newspaper article. Evidently, the and institutional knowledge can speak to this. The gymnasium in the old high school was named for Bill Troy. Here's the article about the field house was, but when the new high school was built, it was named after. Yes, who was named after now, who was the coach of Bill Corey. Is that right? So these guys are suggesting, gosh, could we still have the plaque? Could we name just the wrestling room? It was really because of his wrestling career that it was named before, and so we present this here. And if you look also afterward, there's a policy. The policy is listed how we deal with existing facilities, and so basically we can have it open for any public comment or any discussion over the next 2 meetings, which would be the last one of this year and then probably the first one in September, and then any kind of public can come forward and advocate or express any other ideas, any other names if they want to, and then we would vote on that in September, in wrestling season.
So these, this letter's gotten to the principal, the PTO, obviously to us and the superintendent?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
All those people were copied when I received it.
Okay. So we should just try to get some feedback from those folks, I would say, but I mean, obviously, it's a very moving letter, and the article that's written in from the.
And I know Mr. Fanoff and his friend plan to come, another teammate plan to come and speak at one point as well.
Do you know, do we still have the plaque?
They,
I mean, it says it in the letter, it's in the, I mean, it'd be interesting, so we still have the plaque, hope we do.
I think in the letter he mentions.
Yeah, it does. It
He might even be in possession of them.
No,
I thought he said it's in the office.
Yeah, he believes it's stored.
We can figure that out. For
Right.
this meeting.
Good.
Do you know, Dr. Gilligan, when they were naming things at the high school? And it'd be interesting if we might have minutes for what was named. I know at one point, you know, even when we named the Ann Bradstreet Early Childhood Center, you know, we went back and, you know, Sergeant being named and all those. I'm wondering what went through that and why this was dropped. Do you, institutionally, I mean, even though you're the new guy, you know.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to it. I think one, sometimes when there's a new building, sometimes it's just a new name. It wasn't the fact that they didn't want to name it after him. I mean, the varsity baseball field up there, many don't know his name. It's the Billy Sansucci baseball field, the one at the middle school. You know, so I think as time goes, you know, the Bradstreet was originally for Simon Bradstreet, now it's Ann Bradstreet. So I don't think there was any intention to leave that out. When we opened the new high school, there was a lot of enthusiasm for some folks that were really dedicated to the community, and one was Joe Walsh and one was Tug Crozier. So I don't think anyone overlooked Bill Corey. I do know that last night I did notice in the awards at the scholarship night, that was one of the awards presented, was the Bill Corey Scholarship. So, you know, certainly, I don't know much about Bill Corey, but I do remember the plaque being there. You know, it's a lot like at the high school, the Tug Crozier Gym. Not a lot of the kids call it the Tug Crozier Gym, so it wasn't something that they called the Corey Gym. But
I just didn't know if there was a reason why. Okay.
Well, even it says in the letter that he thinks very rightly so, it made sense that the new facility was named after the coach, Crozier, but that, you know, this young man's still worthy for the wrestling room. So,
yeah, so I don't know. If Bev's listening, I'm not sure. Maybe, or if the stands here. If anyone could find minutes from 1980.
that's great. So we'll see this the next couple of meetings per our policy. So, do we have any public comment this evening? Does anybody have anything they'd like to share?
I do. I would just like to congratulate the softball coach and the baseball coach on being named Merrimack Valley's Coach of the Year. Merrimack Valley Conference. It's a big honor.
That's great.
So.
Anybody else?
I'd just love to personally thank this committee and all those who have been involved in North Andover Public Schools in the last 17 years. So we'll finish our trip as parents on this journey. And I know, you know, so many good things have happened for my kids. I'm really excited for them. Really everything from senior week to mentioning of the vision and hearing screening, which was impactful for my younger son, to be more successful in class, to have glasses. You know, it's really been a really good ride for us, and I'm really appreciative.
That's great. Anybody else? I have one thing I can share. I apologize for missing the beginning of the meeting, but this is why I can now share this. So I was at my last Thompson Arts and Academic Night, and the 5th grade, because we have a librarian dedicated to both Thompson and Sargent, she was able to work with the 5th grade and the green screen that she somehow procured through some grant or something, and they put together 32 minutes of skits that they all wrote, and it was all part of their Lucy Calkins. But it was social studies. They did writing. They wrote a play, the skits, and they performed things about the Intolerable Acts, the Boston Tea Party. There were raps. There were interviews. Going back in a time machine was part of what my daughter and her friends did. It was incredible. But the best part was when my sophomore and I were leaving, and so she had been out of Thompson for 5 years now. She said, "Wow. What a difference in 5 years. 5 years ago, we never could have done that. We did like a debate and we wrote papers and that was it. Look what's happened. That's really a tribute to the district, Mom. That's really impressive. I know you weren't there for all that, but that's impressive." So, but she's absolutely right. That's just 5 years ago. How different the resources and the experiences are. And it was all very collaborative. So I thought you all should hear that. And after that, I'm happy to have a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. McDevitt, second by Ms. Vitsky Lynch. Mr.
Yes.
Trissy?
Yes. Aye.
Aye. Aye. Thank you. Have a lovely evening.
Mr. McDevitt, don't forget your